In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa, asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early with the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, who speared and sacrificed. We asked these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We asked these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We asked these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We asked those Africans who went with Boukman Dessalines to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Let us consented agenda for change and development. Defending our rights, maintaining our rights. Ordemus jura nostre defiendre. All right. We dare to defend our rights. We dare to maintain our rights. You're inside of the Africa Forum, and it's running African. Mindful and cognizant of the fact that to hold a person in oppression, you have to convince them first that they are supposed to be oppressed. Mindful of that. Words of Dr. John Henry Clark, one of the great Pan-Africanists of all times. We've got an interesting program lined up for you this morning as usual. Let me welcome you on the 107s. 107.1 all the way to 107.9. A very pleasant morning to you and welcome on the internet. If you're listening on the internet at irefm.net, good morning, good morning. Good morning to those who are joining us on the continent of Africa. Special welcome. Very special morning to you if you're joining us from the continent of Europe. Very special welcome and a very pleasant morning to you. Thank you for joining. If you're joining from the Caribbean, inside of the Caribbean and outside of the 107s, good morning, good morning, welcome. You're inside of the Africa Forum. Within this space, we craft an African-centered agenda. We're in the process of reuniting the African family for development. It is a vision. Wherever you are this morning, thank you very much for joining. If you're listening to us on your BlackBerry or Android, your iPhone apps, good morning. Welcome to the program. And to my friends listening in from Australia, a little bit disappointed this morning after Hamilton's engine problems in Australia. The Australian Grand Prix, kicking things off on the season, had high hopes for Hamilton. But it's early days yet. Don't like the start of it. A little disappointed. Well, a whole lot disappointed. Because he was on pole, but let's see what happens as we go along. Good morning to you in Australia. Good morning. As I said, we've got an interesting program lined up for you. Lots happening in the world. Can you imagine? They haven't yet identified, they haven't yet found the mysterious Malaysian Airlines. There was a press conference just yesterday morning where the Prime Minister indicated that the plane was actually deliberately interfered with, taken. They did not say hijacked. In the New York Times, one writer posited a few questions. How can a commercial airliner go missing? How, in this hyper-connected age, could it vanish from the earth, apparently without a trace, eluding a nearly, over a week-long search involving more than a dozen governments and some of the world's most advanced surveillance technology? How could a commercial airliner go missing? So, of course, there is horror and there is sadness. And families are still holding on to that shred of hope now that they've heard that the plane possibly did not fall into the ocean, but that it was deliberately taken. They're holding on to that, because at least there is the hope of seeing their family members again. But yes, so that's a question on lots of persons' minds, because this is becoming more and more intriguing by the minute. In the New York Times, and this very same writer talked about how that all the world is not necessarily connected, hyper-connected, and that there are places in this world that are still beyond the grid, and that it reminds us that as much as we lament tracking, that's constant tracking, There's often something deeply comforting in having one's location pinned to a map. So we're watching that. Lots of us are glued to our screens, and because this is really unfathomable for many of us, because we thought, what with Snowden and WikiLeaks and all of that, we thought that we really were all connected in a very, very serious way, and an airliner could not go missing for such a long time, even of 2 days, 3 days at the most, but definitely not simply vanishing and no trace. All right, so we're watching that. We're also watching, the referendum should be well underway in the Ukraine. Quite sure that we can get some information on that right now. In Crimea, there is a referendum underway. Russia, as you probably know by now, vetoed that UN resolution, which was saying that it was illegal. China abstained. There's a special relationship between China and Russia, by the way. We'll talk about that later on as we continue to look at China and Africa and China and Jamaica. But so China abstained from that vote. Russia vetoed that vote. The referendum, I know, is well underway in the Crimea right about now. America has said that it's illegal. The UN has said it's illegal, but it's underway. This is much more complex than it appears. And if you watch CNN, you certainly will not know what's happening. Oh, goodness gracious. So whenever I'm trying to get information on the situation in the Ukraine, and if I just happen to accidentally, just by chance, accidentally bump into CNN, I move from there really, really fast, because if I want to know what is not happening, then that is a place to go. As far as the Ukraine, the situation unfolding in the Ukraine is concerned, I don't even know where we can get information, but one place I know, information that's as objective as possible. I know, though, that one place that we're not going to get that at all is from CNN. Goodness gracious me. That is why radical media is important. And by radical media, once again, we mean media that is creating content, that is creating experiences that challenge the status quo. That is what we mean by radical media, a kind of a disruptor. And we'll talk about what a disruptor is as we continue to talk about what we mean by rebellious communication and radical media. A lot of that happening all around us, a lot of that happening all around us. So many of us go log on to Democracy Now! So many of us from time to time go and check BuzzFeed on the internet and so on. And then IRFM itself was that kind of a media, radical media, in terms of creating content and presenting experiences that challenge the status quo. That is what the station has been doing for many, many, many years. So it really does fit, ideally, the definition of what radical media is. So this is what we need in terms of even getting information on some of the events unfolding, international events. Going to CNN is really tapping into, in terms of a line they take, is tapping into the status quo, is tapping into what the government, what the system want us to hear. And so that's a whole different level. So that's really, orthodox, mainstream, call it what you will. Radical media can be mainstream. IRFM is mainstream media. But radical media like Democracy Now! I think is probably one of the places we can go to get some information on what's happening in Ukraine and in Crimea. Also, there is some good reporting that I've seen. What was this? So this is, Democracy Now! Has done. CCTV, that's a Chinese channel. Yeah, well, they're better than some. Better than a lot. Better than a lot. All right, so what do we have coming up this morning? I've been talking a lot about the book of coming forth by day, which people tend to refer to as a book of the dead. It really is not the book of the dead. It is the manifested in light, the book of coming forth by day, the papyrus of Ani. And I have mentioned from time to time that there are references in this book to Rasta, R-A-S-T-A. And it's interesting because there are 32 references to Rasta in the book of coming forth by day. And if I get a chance this morning, I will be reading most of them. It's not well known that the papyrus of Ani, which is the largest, the most perfect, and the best illuminated of all the papyri containing copies of a Theban recension of the book of coming forth by day. And in that book, there is, and as I said before, references, 32 or so references to Rasta, R-A-S-T-A. And we're going to look at timing too. It's interesting, isn't it? So the papyrus of Ani, written long, and still longer, before the birth of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie. And longer, and still longer, before the biblical text, the Bible. And yet it mentions 32 times Rasta, R-A-S-T-A. It mentions also moringa, and I know that there is a lot of a flurry of activities now around the moringa plant, and it's just being discovered within the last few years here in Jamaica, and is being sold for all kinds of cash, all kinds of monies. A seed for so much, a leaf for so much, the root for so much. Well, moringa is also mentioned in this book, in this ancient text, the papyrus of Ani. All right. All right, so coming up, if we get a chance this morning, we'll mention some of that. But coming up in the program, we're going to be talking about a few things. One of the issues that we started looking at over the last few months, years actually, we've been talking about China in Jamaica, China in the Caribbean, China in Africa. And my views and all of that. I feel that to understand our own particular situation here in the Caribbean waters, China operating within the Caribbean and more specifically in Jamaica, that to understand this, we can get a better understanding of all of this through looking at and examining China's interaction with and relations with the continent of Africa. So we've been doing that. I've been doing that, and looking at all the literature, reading the book, doing the literature review as best as I possibly can. This morning, we're going to talk about coal. We're going to be talking about coal on Goat Island and the plans for the coal plant on Goat Island. For that conversation, we're going to be talking we're looking at coal in particular, right, for this morning. We're looking at clean coal as opposed to dirty coal. What is clean coal? Talking about whether or not this is the best option. So looking at the pros and cons of coal energy. And for that conversation, I'm going to be talking to my brother and a very good friend who is in the United States, who is a chemical engineer himself and also a power expert, Kwame Pianke. He is a trained engineer. He served as an engineering internship at a major chemical company in Michigan in the 1980s. He worked for an architectural engineering firm in Chicago from the late 80s through to the early 90s that served the power industry. As part of his work there, he was on assignment for 4 months to work at Comanche Peak Nuclear. That's outside of Fort Worth, Texas, to help retrofit the piping system of one of the nuclear reactors in the plant. From the early 19th to the present, Kwame Pianke has been working in the automotive industry in design engineering, manufacturing engineering, and finance. He's a Pan-Africanist in Chicago. He was a volunteer tutor at the Center for Inner City Studies after-school program, serving with Conrad Worrell. You remember Conrad Worrell as someone who we invited here for one of our earlier Marcus Garvey celebrations way back in the early 90s. And Kwame Pianke was also a volunteer tutor at Detroit Public Schools Malcolm X Academy, and also a member of the Unsurama Institute's Baba's Club, and that's an African-centered charter school which was created for the fathers of the school's students in order to support the school in achieving its goals. The Baba's Club conducted a rites of passage program for young boys transitioning into manhood. And so he's also been involved in rites of passage programs, the teaching of the principles of Ma'at, and also is a student of the Medinata, which is more commonly known as the Medinata, and one of the founding members of the African American Parents Network in the public school system. He's also a member of the Detroit Black Food Security Network and Ujamaa Food Corp. He's currently a member of ASAC and has been studying the Medinata, as we said before, since 2008. He's married for over 18 years and has three children. Hey, a lot about Kwame Pianke, and we're going to tell you more about him later on in the program. But well qualified and able to talk to us about the idea of coal energy on Goat Island, but more specifically to help us to understand what are the pros and cons of coal energy, and to ask some of the pertinent questions that we need to throw into the public sphere as we look at this critically. So we're going to be talking to Kwame Pianke later on in the program. Also, you might have heard by now that You might have heard by now that the leaders of Caribbean nations on Monday unanimously adopted a broad plan on seeking reparations from European nations for the lingering ill effects of the the transatlantic trade in Africans, enslaved peoples. And Professor Vereen Shepherd, the chair of the Reparation Commission here in Jamaica, the Jamaica Reparation Commission, and also vice chair of the Caribbean Reparations Commission. She's also chair of the UN's working group of experts on people of African descent, author of I Want to Disturb My Neighbor, lectures on slavery, emancipation, and post-colonial Jamaica, and co-author of many numerous, and author of numerous history texts. She's also head of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies. So she's going to be joining me this morning on the phone lines to talk about CARICOM's acceptance of the 10-point plan for reparations. Also, I don't know if you've seen this report, but Al Jazeera had a short discussion, 20 minutes or so, with representatives from the Lide law firm, the firm that advised CARICOM recently. Well, they say they advised CARICOM. Did they really advise CARICOM? I don't know, but they were there, and they might be the law firm to represent part of the reparations, or to represent the reparations commission, the CARICOM Reparation Commission. Well, actually, I do have that interview, and I think that sometime in the program this morning, possibly in place of the bottom line, we might rebroadcast that interview, just so that you get an idea of how other people are discussing the idea of the claim for reparations, how Europeans are discussing this, because we talk about it from our own perspective, through our own lenses. And so let us give a listen to how European journalists are asking questions, how Europeans are responding to these questions regarding the claim for reparations. So I think I'll take that later on in the program. But before that, Professor Vereen Shepherd joins me on the phone lines at around 7 o'clock to just talk briefly about this latest development in the reparations claim. You know, we spoke earlier about China and China in Jamaica. We have been looking, even as we look at China in Africa, we've been looking at Africa in China. And one of the things that we've said in this space from time to time is how racist, and their racial issues to be dealt with area, to describe that area. And that term is Chocolate City. How Africans are doing in China is another case altogether. We've been talking about that. But what about Jamaica in China? Because if they are here, then obviously we're going to go there. It is a two-way street all the time, reciprocity. So that lots of Jamaican businesses, owners of businesses, persons with ideas, have been going to China through the Chinese embassy here on the ground in Jamaica, and have been meeting quite a few challenges. Now, what we're going to talk about this morning is how one businessman, Mr. Hansel Berry, has been dealing with some of these challenges in terms of his own interaction with China, but also to look at, a little bit more from a wider perspective, how other business persons, because he does have knowledge of that, being a Jamaican businessman traveling to China, if they're facing the same challenges as far as he knows. So he's in Florida today, I think. He's in the U.S., but we're going to be talking to him by phone about the challenges that Jamaican businessmen and women are facing in China. So China in Jamaica, one thing, but then there is Jamaica and China, and we have to look at that also. Also coming up on the program this morning, the Gambia Roots Festival is on, and the 11th International Roots Festival is from May 9 to 17 in the Gambia. Jamaicans are invited to go there to participate. Ole Matatal, who is an international correspondent and an entertainment publicist, activist, is also a PR representative with the Gambia Roots Festival, and will be joining me in studio to talk about that. Also with her, our sister Isis Miller, who is one of those persons on the ground in Jamaica, working to bring Africa to Jamaica and Jamaica to Africa, and part of the activities to make the Gambia Roots Festival this year a success from the perspective of having Jamaicans on the ground here, Africans in Jamaica, moving into the Gambia for this festival, May 9 to 17 in the Gambia. The local and international headlines are coming your way at 8:45, so too IRFM Sunday Sports Diary. It's 100 years, a centenary of the UNIA. 100 years of Garveyism is a new series, a new feature that we're starting here this morning on the program. 100 years of Garveyism, and we're going to do this almost, not every, but almost every Sunday right up until August and then beyond. So this morning we're going to be joined in the studio by journalist, Garveyite and community leader, educator Devon Evans, who is a long-time Garveyite, as you know very well. And we're going to be talking about this year, the year that marks the 100th anniversary of the UNIA, but also to look specifically at 100 years of Garveyism. On the phone lines in that discussion, Queen Mother Mariam Samad joins me on the phone, a Garveyite, Pan-Africanist, as you know, Mother Samad to be one of the first Garveyites that lots of Jamaicans have come in contact with. She's joining me on the phone lines this morning as we talk about 100 years of Garveyism. Mwalimu Marcus Garvey, the founder of the UNIA, and this was formed in July 1914 as an international organization, conceptualized, of course, by Mwalimu Marcus Garvey. So we have that and so much more, as you know, in between and around the music. All of that coming up inside of the program. Stay tuned. 7 o'clock, and we're going to be going to the phone lines now to speak with Professor Vereen Shepherd and to kind of give you an update and to update ourselves on what's happening with the reparations issues. And reparations, as you know, there has been in recent times reparations commissions formed on almost all, if not all, Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean nations. We'll find out if it's all. But also that this has gone now to the level of CARICOM, and this is really, when we heard this first, this was like one of the greatest things that could have happened in the process seeking reparations for slavery. And then now a 10-point plan, and the 10-point plan now being adopted. This, for me, is really a big deal as we go to the phone lines to speak with Professor Vereen Shepherd. Professor Shepherd, good morning.
Good morning, Andrea. Good morning to all your listeners.
Right. Vereen, this is interesting, very, very good news, and being reported all across the world, I notice, in almost all newspapers. I just want to back up a little bit to talk about, first of all, how CARICOM came to be involved at this level. Just look at this. So for those persons who do not know, because we've been following this for a while, but just give us a background to how we got to this point.
Yes. Well, for those who don't remember, the reparation movement got really a kind of injection, if you want to put it that way, in July last year, when at the 34th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government, which was held in Trinidad and Tobago, the CARICOM decided that they would set up a reparation commission, a CARICOM reparation commission, and asked all CARICOM nations to establish national committees that would work with the CARICOM Reparation Commission and a steering committee of 5 heads of government to take the matter forward. Yes. And since then, the steering committee of the CARICOM Reparation Commission was established. The CARICOM Reparation Commission was established with Professor Sir Hilary Beckles as the chair. And now we have about 10 Caribbean countries with national committees. So it really moved very quickly. Mm-hmm. We have also had a steering committee meeting in Jamaica. Lots of press interest was in that. We have had a meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have had the latest meeting the CARICOM Commission has had was in Barbados in January. And it was at that meeting that we drafted the 10-point action plan. If you recall, out of the Jamaica meeting, there was issued a 6-point plan. But we expanded that in Barbados to a 10-point action plan. And so that was what was taken to the 25th Intersessional Meeting of CARICOM in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, presented by the chair, Professor Beckles, and accepted and adopted by all CARICOM heads of government. Mm-hmm. And so we're proceeding, it seems to me, rapidly.
Yeah, rapidly, interesting. Vereen, let us talk about the 10 points as quickly as you can, because I know that they're not as simple as they appear. But take us through the 10-point plan.
Yes. Before I do that, I heard you saying that the interest in the media has really escalated.
Yes.
And I have to tell you that we have been getting so many calls and so many requests for interviews from all over the world, from Russia to Australia.
Wow.
That in the aftermath of the 25th intersessional meeting at which a 10-point action plan was accepted, the CARICOM Commission decided to hold a press conference because we just could not cope with the request for interviews, individual interviews to individual members of the Commission.
Yes.
That post-CARICOM press conference was held in Barbados last week, Thursday. It can be picked up on YouTube, and 42 journalists from around the world joined.
Yes, wow.
Because it was streamed live.
Yes.
So the interest is growing, and the journalists descended on St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well. They passed through Jamaica to speak with the National Commission. And so they are scouring the Caribbean now for stories, and every week there is something.
Right, and there's so much in the right. There's a lot in the international press. Are we seeing a similar thing in, say, the Jamaican media?
Well, of course, you are the most consistent. You're always following what's happening, and there is growing interest here. But it's sporadic. It seems more sustained in the international media at the moment. But here it's sporadic. We did have a couple of interviews last week from journalists.
Yes.
But I don't know if any journalists actually joined the press conference. But even though the link had been sent out to all journalists, in the CARICOM region and elsewhere.
And that was last week. You know, I didn't get that link, Vereen. I don't remember seeing that link. Let me put it that way. But we had a lot of issues dealing with here last week, so I could have missed it.
Yes, of course. Yes, and I know RFM is dealing with so much right now.
All right. So
the 10-point action plan begins with a statement of the rationale for the reparation movement in the region.
Yes.
Asserting that the region's indigenous and African descendant communities, who are the victims of crimes against humanity, in the forms of genocide, slavery, trading, and racial apartheid, have a legal right to reparatory justice. And so they are calling the 10-point action plan the CARICOM Reparatory Justice Program. And I think it's a term that's being used internationally now when people are claiming the right to development and claiming justice because of past atrocities. Then they go on to summarize in point form the assertion against, the charge, if you wish, against Europeans, that they were owners and traders of enslaved Africans, that they...
Because so then for persons who have always been asking what exactly is those who are the reparations commissions across the region asking for, what do we mean by reparations? Are we asking for debt cancellation? Are we asking for apologies? That kind of thing. That everything is there.
Everything is settled. The rationale, the justification, and now an elaboration of the 10 points. So the first one is the call for a full formal apology, and this is non-negotiable, because the explanation is that the healing process for victims and the descendants of the enslaved and enslavers requires as a precondition the offer of a sincere formal apology by the governments of Europe, not just a statement of regret. A statement of regret does not accept responsibility for the crime against humanity. The second point is repatriation, and this goes on to each point is elaborated. The elaboration, of course, is the fact that so many people were stolen from Africa, disconnected from their homeland, and that people have a right to return and resettlement, those who require it.
Yes.
Then the third, Indigenous Peoples Development Program, again, it sets out the fact that at the time of the Spanish invasion, the Caribbean had about 3 million indigenous people, all right? Now, if we have 30,000 survivors, that's a lot. So there's a genocidal policy. And it was a deliberate genocidal policy. If we take the example of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where cannons were turned in on the people, very unusual.
Yes.
Cannons are normally turned out to sea.
Yes.
But in St. Vincent, they were turned inland on the indigenous people, and they exiled them to Central America. Then the fourth, cultural institutions, calling for facilities to serve to reinforce within the consciousness of our citizens, an understanding of their role in history as rulers and change agents. And it talks about how in Europe, you have these cultural institutions, but not anywhere in the Caribbean. No slavery museum and that kind of institution.
Yes.
Number 5, public health crisis. You know, yesterday on my own program, I interviewed Dr. Rachel Irving,
yes,
who said the Department of Basic Medical Sciences at UW has been doing some research, and they found something startling. They say that they cannot find within Africa the roots of, say, hypertension and type 2 diabetes. But when Africans were transported here, yes, this is where these illnesses escalated. So the hypertension must have come from the centuries of salted food,
yes,
that they gave us, you know, salt mackerel, salt fish, and that sort of thing. So apparently it's a pandemic in this part of the world. And so even though since independence, post-colonial governments have been struggling with establishing a health system, it cannot compensate and it cannot manage. And so the public health crisis is being fingered with, you know, strategies to address and help the Caribbean to deal with this. Illiteracy eradication is number 6. Number 7, African, and the illiteracy eradication is tied to the need for addressing the really, you know, deficient education system that we have. And we talk about the fact that at the moment of, well, during slavery and even after, there was never an intention to properly educate people. In fact, there was a deliberate program of miseducation. And we are suffering from that right now. And then African Knowledge Program, the forced separation of Africans from their homeland, has resulted in cultural and social alienation from identity and existential belonging. And so, you know, this talks about building bridges of understanding and belonging and trying to restore the connection. This is different from repatriation, eh?
Yes.
Yes. This is more broad-based for everybody, whether you want to go back and live in Africa or not.
Right.
Number 8, psychological rehabilitation. This talks about the psychological trauma and, you know, the way in which Europeans established white supremacy and tried to denigrate the human family and Africans. And so this is where the legacies are evident, or most evident, apart from the health. Then we have a reference to technology transfer. And it's very interesting because in this section, we invoke the Right to Development Declaration by the United Nations and look at the discussions about the relationship between freedom and development and how technological backwardness was the experience of the Caribbean, because this was deliberate. There was a deliberate policy in the mercantilist system to ensure that trade was bilateral, no regional connectedness, and really no industrialization in the Caribbean. In fact, you know, there was a British slogan which said, not a nail is to be made in the colonies. Not a nail is to be made in the colonies. And that represents what happened in terms of no development, no backward or forward linkages and so on. And then finally, debt cancellation. And that is developed, as I said, in terms of we don't want any discussion about, well, you have had grant aid and whatever since independence, because it's not enough, you know. But
so obviously a very comprehensive,
wide-ranging. It is a comprehensive, yes.
I can't think of anything that hasn't been covered there.
Yes,
very, very broad.
We thought about it very carefully. Yes. I mean, everybody can elaborate on the points. You can say, well, do you have this in it or do you have this in it, you know? But it covers generally, but each national committee will not obviously take the action plan and do research around them because there's still a long way to go, Andrea.
Right, and what it does for me is that, you know, and listen, and I've read it a few times, but that, and it brings, you know, all in one together, all the different issues that, you know, so many Pan-Africanists have been talking about for such a long time, just, you know, raising these issues, and it's almost like, you know, it's a pattern, but what's happening, but here we have them in one place now, under the umbrella of reparation. So where do we go from here now? That
Good question.
Yes.
Good question. Okay, my understanding from the chair who was there in St. Vincent is that all Caribbean nations have signed off on this. The next step is that, there's a sort of government advisory committee of 5 heads of government. And the CARICOM Reparation Commission is now to meet with that advisory committee to plot the way forward. But included in the way forward is an expectation that a letter will now be written to the British government. Because so far, and you have seen the British government saying in the media, nobody has approached them yet, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So negotiation is going to be the first step. And so letters of demand will be written. And the plan is to have an intergovernmental conference meeting in London in June this year, at which the formal claim will be there and the negotiation will begin. However, if that breaks down, if that doesn't work, then there'll be legal action. And the Caribbean seems to be committed to that. However it turns out, they feel that we must go forward.
Brilliant. So that, let me understand, you said the plan is to have this meeting in June, so that is not yet determined.
It's not finalized because there's this other step which we have to take, which is that the CARICOM Commission on Reparation must sit down with the advisory committee so that we do everything carefully, So that meeting should take place way ahead of June. We're not that far from June, so we're just hoping that will happen because it seems to be a step before planning the conference. But the call is for letters to be written to Europeans, certainly before June. Now, you realize that CARICOM is behind in this, right? Because other groups of countries have already written to their former colonial powers. Suriname has served a claim on Holland already.
Yes.
There's a case in the French courts now involving descendants of enslaved people in the territories colonized by France. And the U.S. Virgin Islands, that used to be the Danish Caribbean, they have been already opening negotiations. So in a sense, the CARICOM region is the British colonized, the formerly British colonized region is behind the others. And I say that because people have been saying, well, why are you going to have a bilateral meeting? Why is it not a meeting of all the people who are within the CARICOM grouping? And the reason is that they are far advanced of us.
Right,
so we have to catch up.
And the countries like the BVI and the Virgin Islands, I mean, they've been on this forever, for example.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I don't know if you saw that report, Mike Hanna from Al Jazeera speaking with Richard Stein and Adrian McQuaid and Kevin Bales about this latest development with CARICOM adopting the 10-point plan.
I didn't see the Al Jazeera, but I've seen other interviews given by Martin Day, who is the
yes, I've seen that.
in Lide.
All right. Okay. Well, I do have that. And what I found interesting is just listening to that. So it's a European journalist, and they're, more or less all Europeans on the panel. And some of the issues that were raised there, I think I want to carry it back today because I think for ourselves, as I said before, this is something that, we have been working on. This is something that we want to see happen. And so our questions tend to be the kind of questions of learning more. How can this happen?
Yes.
What do we need to do next and so on?
Right.
But they're asking some different questions in their spaces, which I want to bring to the fore. But one of the things that I heard coming out of that interview from Al Jazeera is how persons are now saying that, movement on reparations for slavery, transatlantic trade in Africans, that how before this happens, and one should think about modern day slavery. And I thought, wow, so here we go again.
Yes, they have been doing that. They want to obscure the responsibility, or they want to obscure the information on the historic enslavement of Africans and the transatlantic trade. You remember they did this in 2007.
Yes,
to try to downplay the bicentennial and to shift the focus from the trafficking in persons in the past and the modern day slavery. Now, of course, none of us support modern-day slavery. But we are saying that that is not what we're calling for reparation for. We're calling for reparation for the historic trade in Africans that lasted over 300 years. And no other group has suffered what black people have gone through that system. No other group. So they will do that, and I see the attempt to do that every time we're interviewed by European journalists. And there, as I said, there have been many. Al Jazeera did a previous one with us in the Caribbean, by the way.
Yes.
And they are continuing this. And as I said, Russian TV has been trying to find us. And we have given interviews, members have given interviews to Australian journalists. Because what is happening, in fact, Arab TV, the Arab journalists are interested in this as well. Because remember that the British Empire spread so far and wide,
Yes.
Atrocities were committed in so many places that people are now watching what is happening in the Caribbean and wondering, hey, maybe we should start to put our case forward. And this is what Britain is afraid of.
And it's interesting that, we have the Arab thinking that way, because
they are thinking about maybe a claim against them.
We should also be thinking about a claim against them too.
Exactly. That is what they are now. That's why they're tuned into what's happening here.
Yes. We laugh, but it's serious business. We're out of time, and I really wanted to get this on the table, though, that CARICOM has adopted the 10-point plan, and that the progress is happening, the movement is continuing, and from now the plan is to just once again to meet in Britain to have a discussion with
the government and the CARICOM heads, and of course with the advisory, hopefully with the CARICOM, the chair of the CARICOM Reparation Commission, because the CARICOM Commission always has to be represented, because we are the ones who are getting the information, feeding the information, the content to the heads. They're not historians, right?
Yes.
They're not. Well, some of them are lawyers, it is true.
Of course,
but
yes.
they have not been looking at this. So we are the ones doing the research and advising them, sending them information.
I thought that yesterday when I was watching that Al Jazeera interview with the lawyer, I thought, well, he should have had a historian in the studio, at least off camera, feeding him with some of those answers.
They have been trying to catch up, with the information from the Caribbean, because while they did the Kenyan Mau Mau case, they don't have as much information or knowledge about the Caribbean.
Yes, it's obvious.
They have come a long way from the first time I heard interviews with them, but we have to do the research, which they will need. But
of course, yes,
the legal case is going to be interesting if it comes to that.
We're watching that.
Britain has taken steps to block any possible approach in the domestic court. It cannot go to their domestic court. It will have to be the International Court of Justice.
Well, all of that is understandable, don't it?
Yes.
Yes, we expect that and more.
And they are saying no case before 1974 and no case from the Commonwealth. So they have gone ahead to take steps to block everything, even using the international protocol. So, but the lawyers seem to think that there's a way around all that they're doing. So it will be, if anything, Andrea, it will be very interesting. A learning experience for everybody.
We're waiting to see what they're going to do about banana and the rest of it before we're done. Very just before you go, we're giving away 2 books this morning, Jamaica and the Debate over Reparation for Slavery.
Excellent.
A discussion paper prepared by the Jamaica National Bicentenary Committee. Of course, that would be yourself, Ahmed Reid, Cavell Francis, Kamika Murphy.
Yes.
And the question we're asking came out of what you just said about where did there were 6 points initially, and then in which country were the 6 points, were 4 more points added? And that we want the answer to that question. So we're not asking you, Vereen, but I just wanted you to stay on to make sure we're asking the question right.
You want me to listen?
Right.
I'm listening. I'm listening to the program.
All right. Okay.
So I will listen to see what answers come in, and how should I do this? Call back the operator and...
No, I'll just give the operator. I wanted you online so that...
you mean you keep listening now?
Yeah, no. I wanted you to ensure that the question I asked was right. So as long as you say I can go ahead with that question, that's
sure,
fine.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Great.
Yes.
All right, so I'll give it to the operator and we're fine. I know the countryman. I was listening closely.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Vereen, Professor Shepherd.
Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, Professor Vereen Shepherd, there Caribbean leaders, as you heard, met in St. Vincent on Monday to discuss a landmark legal claim to sue Britain and 7 countries in Europe for problems which can be traced back to the trade, the slave trade. European states targeted Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Denmark. Quick break, we'll be right back.
ATL Automotive Limited, your authorized distributors for Honda, Volkswagen, Audi, Jaguar and Land Rover, is open on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The time by ATL Automotive is
7:25. Remember now that the CARICOM leaders have adopted a 10-point plan demanding, among other things, European aid in strengthening the region's public health, educational and cultural institutions, and the plan also seeking debt cancellation and apology from former colonies. Now, you heard Professor Shepherd said that initially it was a 6-point plan, but then in a Caribbean country, 4 more points were added. Where did this happen? Which country? In which country did they add 4 more points to the original 6-point plan? And we have one more question to ask later on, but we'll ask it shortly once somebody have won this. All right, so we're not going to take your calls on air. We're going to ask you to call and give the telephone operator your answer. Once again, we're giving away 2 books, Jamaica and the Debate Over Reparation for Slavery, a discussion paper prepared by the Jamaica National Bicentenary Committee. And just to remind you, we're not giving away this book, but to remind you that in the Running African Book Club, we are reading Britain's Black Debt, Reparations for Caribbean Slavery and Native Genocide by Hilary Beckles, Professor Hilary Beckles. Britain's Black Debt, Reparations for Caribbean Slavery and Native Genocide. Do not text me the answer. Do not tweet me the answer. Do not email me the answer. You have to call in the answer. All right, the numbers. I'm very sorry that we're not taking the text, tweet, and email answer. And the numbers are 974-5079, 5051, 5043. And did we say 5079? All right, also 618-0352. Also 1-888-991-4152. Lots of numbers for you to call. All right, quick break.
With Protector Series from Sagicor, get $1 million in life insurance coverage for less than $20 a day. The time by Protector Series from Sagicor is
7:27. I want to talk now about China. In this segment of the program, we're going to be looking at the plans, and we've been talking about this, the plans for coal energy on on Goat Island. And want to talk a little bit about that. But Christopher Sergiu is writing. Hey, Christopher. Christopher Sergiu is writing in The Gleaner today. And he says, and this is a report from him. Christopher, yes. All right, he says that this comes out of Washington. Jamaica should not expect any support, financial or otherwise, from the United States for any coal-powered energy initiative now or at any time in the future. A high-ranking member of the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Energy Resources last week used the start of a journalist's working tour in Washington to make it very clear that coal was a no-no. And he quotes the high-ranking official: "We have a U.S. government policy that we don't support World Bank or other international financial institutions' financing of new coal facilities abroad for reasons of climate change. I don't know if that applies to Jamaica." And that's what the State Department official said in response to a question from a Gleaner of a start of a working tour, which has been done under the theme, The Future of Energy in the Americas. And it says, I think it would a colleague chipped in immediately at the State Department, and the State Department official declared the U.S. is not supportive of third countries that want those financing. The U.S. government wouldn't support any foreign government that came and asked for international financial institutional support for coal plant. Leave it like that, added the American official.
When one man climbs, the rest are lifted up. When others stand, we're close.
All right, and we do have a winner. That was quick, and we have another question to ask later on. All right, so Stanley Green. So Stanley Green of Otarias, Stanley Green, you are the winner of one book, Jamaica and the Debate Over Reparation for Slavery, a discussion paper prepared by the Jamaica National Bicentenary Committee, and you can pick that book up. We have your number. Joe Morgan will be calling you to arrange for you to collect your book. So that's Stanley Green. All right, stay tuned because we do have another question coming up. And that question is going to have to do with the 10-point plan, so listen closely. Okay, I didn't say the answer. The answer is Barbados. The question is, originally the plan, the 6 point, there were 6 points and 4 were added, and where were they added, which country? And you heard Professor Shepherd said it was in Barbados. So the answer is Barbados. All right, so back to China in Jamaica and Jamaica in China. We're going to be going to the phone lines now to speak with Mr. Hansel Berry, who is a businessman who is one of those persons who is trying to do business with China. Many challenges for Jamaican business persons. Jamaican businesses trying to do business with China. Right before we go to Kwame Pianke, who will be talking to us about coal and coal energy, the pros and cons. All right, so Mr. Hansel Berry is on the line. Good morning, Mr. Berry. How are you?
Morning to you, Andrea, and your listeners.
Okay, great to have you. A businessman in Jamaica who have been in business for many moons, and I know you're not that old, but hey, and now you've been looking to China because obviously it happens, and we see that happening on the continent of Africa too, where China is in Africa and where businesses from Africa doing business in China. So we see a similar thing happening here in the Caribbean. Now, what made you decided to look to China to do business?
Andrea, the world is looking to China, and China has been a world power when it comes down to business. And in a sensible, reasonable businessman, looking to make a good return on their investment would want to go to China.
Right, and so
basically that was the decision,
the thinking behind it, and so yeah. Tell us a little bit about your how you started, because your experiences. So you had this thought that, listen, as a businessman, the world is looking to China, and this is where this is where we see the economy is growing very strongly and also quickly, and so many persons looking to China. What was the first thing that you did after thinking about this? What was the first thing for you?
Well, I made contact. With someone in China, and making that contact, I actually did a purchase online.
Yes.
And after doing the purchase online, it was so fluent and so reasonable and honest, yes, that I decided to take a trip, and that was about 3 years ago.
Right.
And before I give that synopsis, Andrea, it is interesting to know that speaking to an official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they told me that there's a lot of Jamaicans who have been in the same position as I, but they're afraid to come forward.
All right, so we're going to get you a position. Hold on a little, Mr. Berry, because we want to get you the position that you're in a little while, because this is very interesting. So you made contact with China 3 years ago. You actually visited China, and so did you do this? And have you been in contact with the Chinese embassy here in Jamaica?
Yes, after making contact for 3 years, I've been back and forth, and with my contact there in China, they were very honest. They were very hospitable in doing their business. They're very loyal, as it seems in the first instance, and they develop a trust.
Mm-hmm.
They develop a trust.
Yes.
You know.
So that it was smooth going in the beginning.
Very smooth.
All right. So what happened? What are the major challenges that you have come upon since then?
All right. After the 3 years as elapsed, you know, they've gotten your confidence. Then you will find what actually happened to me is that after getting my confidence, you know, my loyalty, then you will, you know, put that trust in those individuals.
Mm-hmm.
You go and you make your purchase, hoping that whatever you purchase will be shipped to you.
Yes.
Then I believe it is a 3 point scam that they do, Andrea.
Wow.
I'll tell you why.
Yes.
First, they build your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Secondly, they have that. They make you give them that loyalty, and they give you that loyalty. And the third thing they do is to switch banking information. So you will find now that you used to make a wire transfer in an account, and all of a sudden something has changed. And because that's changed, they give you a different banking information.
Yes.
Right? And having that banking information, you make your deposit, only to find when your container arrives, nothing is in the container.
When you said
nothing you bought is in the container.
And when you say nothing you bought is in the container, did you get more upscale goods? Did you get more expensive goods, or were they of a lower standard, or totally different in terms of what you purchased?
Basically totally different, Andrea. Basically totally different. I mean, nothing that you bought in terms of monetary value. The value would be significantly less.
Oh, okay.
They actually come out with a terrible loss.
Wow. And I hear you say terrible loss. And one of the things you say that you have spoken to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that's Jamaica's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And what did they say to you?
Well, they let me know, Andrea, that a lot of Jamaicans are in the same position as I am, and that they are afraid to come forward. Having all of that, Andrea, I had my receipts, I had my videos, I had pictures of my contact, and we have all the information for them. We have their address, we have their personal banking information. And let me tell you this, I made contact with the Chinese embassy He actually gave me a number of addresses in China where I could go and try to get it sorted out. Right? After doing that, Andrea, I went to China with his advice. Went to a number of places that he gave me. And to my surprise, Andrea, all the places were closed down.
All the places he gave you were closed down?
Yes, no one's there. The furniture moved out. And nobody's there.
And these are names and addresses given to you by the Second Secretary of the Economic and Commercial Section of the Chinese Embassy here in Jamaica?
Yes.
Well, let me just say that we have been trying to get Mr. Long Zhang, is his name. We've called him, and we spent a good deal of last week trying to make contact with him. We did speak to persons at the Chinese Embassy here in Jamaica, but we weren't able to tie down Mr. Long Zhang, who is the Second Secretary of the Economic and Commercial Section. But we're still trying to do so, and when we get him, we'll have him respond to some of these issues. So basically, Mr. Berry, what you're saying is that you have been scammed. You have been royally scammed.
Yes, and tell you what, Andrea, while I was there, I'm realizing that I could get in contact with those addresses that was given. I went to the local police station, and while there, nobody speaks English. I actually passed a police officer who was speaking English on his phone to somebody. And when I identified myself and we were in dialogue, And when I showed him the information and told him what happened, all of a sudden he doesn't speak English again.
So a police officer who was speaking clear English on his phone didn't speak English once he realized what your problems were.
Right. And when I went back to the places that I bought the stuff, when they saw that I was trying to buy more stuff, they were speaking English. But as soon as I showed them what I had, then nobody speaks English again.
So what provision, well, it's not funny, what provision, Mr. Berry, has the Jamaican government made? What provision is in place for Jamaicans who are doing business in China? What is in place? How does this work?
And it's funny you ask that question, Andrea, because when I did my research, I realized that the U.S. government, the Canadian government, even the English government, and a number of Central American government have embarked on campaigns to educate their citizens about dealing and doing business in China. No, we have not gotten that from Jamaica. We have not gotten that from Jamaica. And we have not gotten
yes, go
any
ahead.
support at all from Jamaica.
It is something
where that is concerned. Going on, it is an ongoing scam.
This is a very important point you make, and it's something that we've been saying in this space for many years now. As a matter of fact, the first time we noticed that, China's expansion in Africa, we started looking at Africa in China, because we have that happening just the same. And the issues you are raising here are the very same issues raised by African businesses trying to do business in China. Now, and this is why we say we must learn from the mistakes that are being made by Africa, by African governments, in their relations in doing business with China. Now, you after all of this, you made contact with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Jamaica. Apart from telling you that your problem is a problem that's very, very common among Jamaican businesses trying to do business with China, which is that a lot of businesses are being scammed. What options did they give to you? What are they saying?
I'm basically left out in the cold, Andrea, and it is so sad.
So you must.
It's so sad because we realize Jamaica is opening its doors to these Chinese nationals, and I say sad because some of these business investors would have been some of the people who have scammed some of the Jamaicans.
You see, that's a situation. There has to be, I think, more accountability from the Jamaican government, and also requiring that's the Jamaican government requiring that of China. China has been very, very strident in saying you must protect our citizens, there must be security, there must be A, there must be B. And this is why we talk about how do we leverage our relationship with China? How do we now protect our businesses, our businessmen like Mr. Berry, who has been to China on more than one occasion, but now who finds himself royally scammed, and what are you going to do now, Mr. Berry? You must count your losses?
Well, basically that's what they're saying, Andrea, because we have no cooperation from the Jamaican government. We have no cooperation from the Chinese government. So basically, businessmen like myself, with many others who are afraid to come forward, have to just count their losses and pay back a big loan that they took from the bank.
I implore Jamaican businesses, and I must say, I understand why businesses are not coming forward, and I must congratulate you on your own courage, commend you on your courage for coming forward and putting this in the public space, because we knew this was happening. We've seen it with the continent of Africa, but here in Jamaica, businessmen are not coming forward. Businesses are not coming forward to say we are being scammed in China, and I think you must do so for there to be change, for there to be any kind of redress. You must do so. You must come out in the open to say, this has been my experience. I'm being scammed. Yeah. There's nothing in place, so that we can actually begin to change this problem. All right. So has that turned you off doing business with China, or are you trying other routes?
Most definitely, because my awareness, I mean about people and about international trade, where you are not being given that solid backing by your government. I mean, you're making an investment. It's not I'm not setting up a corner shop. I'm making an investment. I'm employing people. You know, so it definitely put a damp on my trade relationship with China.
It is something.
And I'm looking elsewhere, and I've been looking elsewhere, and I've been doing business elsewhere with other countries.
All right, Mr. Berry, all the best. You know, most we can say is what you have done is commendable because you've come out, and what you have done is to put a warning also to persons who now are thinking of doing business with China to say, you know, what would you advise them to do, though? What would you advise persons to do who are now in the process of doing exactly what you did, which is go to the Chinese embassy, go to China yourself, make the purchases yourself, take your video, your camera, video everything, and now your shipment lands in Jamaica, but it's nothing that you purchase. As a matter of fact, it's substandard goods. How would you advise persons who are in the process of doing business with China?
Well, if persons are cognizant and really want to do business, they'll have to stay in China until their goods has been delivered to the wharf and see their container being shipped off. But more so, Andrea, I'd implore the Jamaican government to be a part, to play more room, more cooperation between Beijing and Kingston, you know,
yes.
to get people more confident in doing business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are going to get scammed just the same.
Is there a Jamaican consulate or anything like that in Beijing?
Yeah, there's a Jamaican embassy in Beijing.
Right. Were they of any help to you?
I didn't get to go that side. I was in mainland China.
Okay. All right.
The addresses weren't from mainland China.
Yeah, so that's what was out of your way. All right, Mr. Berry, thank you very much. Once again, we implore the Jamaican government to be more proactive, to be a partner, because you can be all kinds of things in this relations that we're having with China. And are you a partner?
Yes.
And if you're a partner, then how come these things are happening to Jamaican businesses as they travel and businessmen as they travel into China for trade and so on? Thank you very much, Mr. Berry.
Thanks for having me, and it was a pleasure.
All right, and if you bump into any other businessmen or businesses who want to talk about this, we will make this space available for anyone who wants to talk about their experiences.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. All right. So yes, and that's why we keep saying that we must learn from the mistakes in terms of the government to government relations with China. And how do you educate? We heard Mr. Berry saying that, you know, in other countries you see governments making sure that information is out there in the public, informing the public about, you know, trade in China, how you go about doing this, what's to do, and so. But the education process is lacking here on the ground in Jamaica, and I think that's something that we should look at immediately, not just about the aid and the money coming into your pocket. What about your people now? Because if China comes into Jamaica in the way they're coming into Jamaica, you must expect that there's going to be some kind of reciprocity. Jamaica is going to go to China. It is how it is. It is a law of the universe. So we must put something in place to ensure that our citizens are protected from scamming and any kinds of these kinds of problems as they go into China for trade. These are business people, black business people on the ground here in Jamaica who are not asking government for anything. They're just being part of the landscape of providing jobs, creating employment, and so on.
Running African. Reuniting the African family for development.
All right, we're back with you on Twitter at SSMINC says, one businessman shipped a container of tomato paste, and when it arrived in Jamaica, it was full of sand. And Champion Boblo, did you get through? She says nobody answering. I think that was to answer the question on the book. And Akila Mantala says, excellent interview with Professor Shepherd. Thanks for keeping us informed as usual. Dale Davis says, it is said that the media is owned, and he puts protege in brackets. Can we depend on the media in being a platform for democracy and free speech? Democracy is an interesting thing, and everybody thinks that democracy is the best thing. And I don't know that free speech and democracy equals the same thing. We must look at democracy very, very soon, and especially the kind of democracy that is being forced on African countries by Western countries. We must talk about that. Democracy seems to be relative depending on who is talking. One could ask, is there democracy in the United States or Britain for that matter? All right. Party Market Chippy says, all right, okay, retweeting there. Aldith Hunker, thank you very much for tweeting on Twitter. And Mike.Orchard-Gale. DJ Wizzle, yeah, no, Hamilton is in trouble, my brother. Well, it was just for that one, the Australian Grand Prix. We'll see what happens later on. We're going to go back to the phone lines, where we're now going to be talking to Kwame Pianke. And we've been telling you a little bit about Kwame, but first this.
In every heart, there is a...
All right, I want to talk about coal and coal energy in Jamaica. Kwame Pianke is a trained engineer. He's a chemical engineer. He served an engineering internship at a major chemical company in Michigan in the 80s. He's worked for an architectural engineering firm in Chicago from the late 80s through to the early 90s, and that serviced the power industry. As part of his work there, he was on assignment to work at Comanche Park Nuclear outside Fort Worth, Texas, to help retrofit the piping system of one of the reactors, the nuclear reactors at the plant. And from the 90s to the present, he's been working in the automotive industry in design engineering, manufacturing engineering, and finance. A Pan-Africanist who has been studying the Medu Neter since the 2008 or before. Also has worked with persons like Conrad Worrell in Chicago as a volunteer tutor at the Center for Inner City Studies. So we have on the lines Kwame Pianke joining me now. Kwame, good morning.
Good morning, Sister Makaru. How are you this morning?
I am doing very well, thank you very much. And you?
I'm doing fine. It's a nice, balmy -9 degrees where I am.
All right, great. All right, Kwame, there's a report in today's paper before we get into the discussion out of Washington, where Washington is saying that it will not it will not support, financial or otherwise, any coal-powered energy initiative here in Jamaica. I don't know how that is going to change the narrative on using coal and a coal-fired power plant on Goat Island. But of course, you know the background to that. And so this morning we want to talk a little bit about coal in itself and what we mean by coal energy. Can we start there, Kwame? What when we say coal energy, what are we talking about?
Yeah, it's just you're basically burning the coal, and it's coal is a hydrocarbon, and you're creating a combustion process, which when you burn the coal, a lot of times you're using steam turbines to power the transmission lines. So you use the coal, you boil water, you create steam, and it creates transmission to lines to power homes. Now, the problem with coal is there's a lot of particulates with it, particularly sulfur and nitrogen. That's what they concentrated on here in the States in the early 70s, with traces of mercury and other toxic metals. And I'm just going to run through some of the hazardous air pollutants from coal that are as a result. You have acid gases such as hydrogen chloride and hydrogen fluoride. You have benzene, toluene, which are carcinogens, dioxins, which are also carcinogens, formaldehyde, arsenic, and other heavy metals. So that's basically essentially what you have as a byproduct of coal production. Now, there's this new catchphrase called clean coal. And what they do with clean coal now, there's a couple of mitigating things that they do. You have a scrubber, which is you desulfurize the flue gas from the coal. You have also something called a Venturi scrubber, where, again, basically liquid is introduced at the throat of the exhaust and the inlet gas to basically trap the sulfur. And then you have NOx burners, which is nitrogen oxide, to reduce the creation of nitrogen oxides. And now they're also using electric static precipitators and also charcoal, which is called activated carbon injection, to keep the sulfur and mercury from going out into the atmosphere. Now, the issue, particularly with activated carbon injection, that is really the one that the coal industry is promoting as clean coal now, because the other things have been tried. They've been in use in the United States for years, and according to the EPA, it's reduced pollution. But they don't count mercury as a toxic substance here in the United States. It's a hazardous substance. So activated carbon injection, you trap that coal in the charcoal. What do you do with that waste? Where do you bury that waste? And that is a major issue now, because you still create ash from all these other processes, and this is with activated carbon injection, you also have toxic ash. And they just basically had a major disaster in 2008 in Tennessee where they just buried the toxic ash in the ground, and that toxic ash leaked into the groundwater, destroying a whole bunch of homes.
And I know you say about lightly destroying a whole bunch of homes, but this was a pretty serious situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not saying it lightly at all.
Yes,
I'm saying,
yes.
I mean, I sound. You destroy the homes, you destroy the groundwater, you destroy the farmland.
Yes.
And so basically, are you going to be giving away your long-term food sovereignty for a coal plant? You know, my family's from Jamaica. From what I've seen in Jamaica, the several times I've visited, the water table's pretty high. So where are you going to bury this coal in Jamaica? And if the water table is high, you know, again, that's seeping into the farmland. You already have a disaster from the bauxite plants, you know, with the mud lakes destroying farmland. Two, again, we're talking about the mercury and the benzene and all those other things. In addition to the cancers that are produced from heavy metals are known to promote aggressive behavior among people. And there is now a link that has been proven between heavy metal exposure and crime. So are you going to also add that to the mix in Jamaica? I mean, that's kind of an interesting strategy that the government seems to be taking. And then the other question that needs to be asked is, where is this coal coming from now that the U.S., under the guise of global warming, is not going to support any new coal plants? And really, I think they're using this as a counter move to China's expansion in the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
And frankly, China has become a net coal importer as of 2009 because they are using as much coal as they can. I think 70% of their energy is produced from coal because of the, you know, the de-ruralification, if there's such a name, or mass urbanization of the people in China. And what is also happening, so whatever coal they have is being used for energy purposes, and they need the excess coal for steel production because China is one of the leading steel producers in the world, if not the leading steel producer in the world. So, again, where is this coal going to come from to power Goat Island?
Have you, and you're raising some very important questions, and I kind of like that because I think it's for us, critical thinking on this is very important. One of the questions we should be asking, and I hear you asking this, we take it for granted that, you know, you say coal and some people talk about, oh, well, maybe China will take the coal, but you say China importing coal. We hear America saying that we're not going to support this, but they're not going to do it anyway for many different reasons. So you've posited the question, is it we hear about cost. How much cheaper coal is. Let us talk about that, both against the background of where this coal might be coming from and what we hear now being thrown out as a catchword in the conversation of a coal plant, possible coal plant on Goat Island, clean coal. Yes, and
let's assume the coal's coming from China, you know, which I think is a stretch based on what's going on in China now. To transport the coal requires it to go on ships. Ships are powered by oil. So now you're adding the oil component in terms of the cost for the coal coming into Jamaica. And as you know, as a developing world, and I hate to use that term, let's call it as the resource-rich world is moving into the middle class, their oil consumption is going to go up. Therefore, oil prices are going to go up. And so, again, that shipping component is going to increase upon the delivery of the coal to Jamaica. And then when people talk about cost of energy, unfortunately, they're only talking about the upfront cost and not the total cost, because there's a cost to bring the coal in, there's a cost to power the coal. That's the upfront cost. What are the costs to dispose of the coal? What are the costs to the health of the people when you have, you know, cancer wards filled, you have people with psychological issues, you have people with asthma, you have people with allergies, you have people with all sorts of illnesses that just stress the health system in the country. And then there's costs that can't be quantified. You know, you have sick loved ones, deaths, you know, long-term care of people who are sick. And so there's just that non-quantifiable cost that you have. You're only talking about upfront costs. And there's actually a concept called energy return on investment. And they're finding now that coal is becoming less attractive, along with nuclear power is becoming less attractive in terms of energy return on investment because of all of the back-end costs that are associated with that.
All right, Kwame, hold the line for me, please. I'm going to take a quick break and be right back.
All right, no problem.
St. Thomas Credit Union Partner Plan. That's a partner to trust. When you're saving, don't worry. We'll help you with a big bonus.
The temperature is
now 29 degrees Celsius right here in Ocho Rios.
Only Optical Elements has the latest technology lenses and frames to suit your taste and budget. Visit us at 67 Halfway Tree Road. Online at opticalelementsja.com or call 929-8284. Optical Elements. Vision in style. The time by Optical Elements is
2 minutes now after 8 o'clock. We're speaking with engineer and power expert Kwame Pianke talking about coal energy. You know, one of the things that has been causing an upstir literally in Jamaica is this idea that Jamaica, through on the logistics hub that's going to be on Goat Island, that coal energy will be used. What Kwame Pianke is doing for us is raising some of the questions that we should be asking among ourselves here. We probably don't have the answers. What we do have are examples in a lot of the cases of where this has been done in other places. And then when you put everything together, you know, you can make an educated you can extrapolate from what we know about coal energy as to what might happen in Jamaica. Kwame, what do you say to people, though, who say, you know, we're begging for the question that our thing is to oppose and not necessarily to look at the wider context? But I know that in China there's this idea of pollute first and then clean up later. Do you see that this might be something that Jamaica might be going down that road with the very same strategy that is being used in China, and how dangerous is this?
Yeah, Jamaica may be going down that road, and I think they're kind of looking at China's strategy from a surface perspective because China is right now using coal as a stopgap measure. China installed more solar energy last year in 1 year than the United States has in their whole history. And so obviously China's taken a parallel path, seeing that the damaging results of this coal regime that they're using. What is more damaging for a place like Jamaica, one, Jamaica, relatively speaking, is small. Two, Jamaica is mountainous. So the mountains have a tendency to capture and trap the smog. I mean, you see this when you fly into Kingston. You go into Manchester, you sit atop Spur Tree Hill, and you see the smog in that area there. And so what are you going to unleash in Jamaica by bringing a coal plant there? And I do not see renewable energy being explored as an option. And, you know, a lot of people still think renewable energy is pie in the sky, but, you know, I think Germany, 30% of their power is renewable energy as we speak now, while Jamaica's goal is to have 20% by 2030. And the sun is more direct. Mm-hmm. And I did a quick calculation in preparation for this interview. I was looking at one of the bigger ports in the world, which is the Port of Los Angeles / Long Beach, and they use about 416,000 megawatt hours of power a year. And essentially, based on an 8,800 hour year, you need a 48 megawatt plant to power this. And so to be conservative, let's assume we need a 100 megawatt plant. Well, you have several 100 megawatt installations throughout the world of solar power. And it doesn't have to be solar power only. You can combine solar with geothermal, solar with hydropower, solar with tidal power. All these energy options are currently being used throughout the world right now. And there's no reason why Jamaica can't do this. And in fact, in Africa and Zimbabwe, they're going to install 300 megawatt solar power plants in the next 12 months. So if Africa can do it,
Then we certainly can, and especially Zimbabwe now under heavy sanctions. But let me ask you this: what we hear a lot about, and we're not taking time necessarily to figure out for ourselves, is cost. It's cheaper to.
Yes, and what's happening now is that solar power and renewable energy are getting close to cost parity with coal, and we're talking about the upfront cost parity with coal. And mind you, coal is heavily subsidized by the various countries that export it. And so solar power, on the other hand, is not. So they're talking that solar power is getting close to cost parity with coal within a couple of years being unsubsidized. And so just to give you some examples, some websites will say it's $1 per watt now for solar power. Some are saying $1.80 per watt. So again, this whole argument that solar is more expensive is, to me, somewhat disingenuous, especially when you consider the back-end cost.
So that Jamaica should be thinking about the opportunity costs and not so much about the immediate. But I also hear you saying that this idea of clean coal technology is not as cheap as it is.
Store that, and the power cost associated with it makes coal cost prohibitive. The activated carbon injection. The other things have been installed already, and they're installed relatively cheaper. The precipitators, the NOx burners, the Venturi scrubbers. And, when I was in college, I worked in the chemical industry, and those are commonly used in the chemical industry. But trust me, the town I worked in college was a heavily polluted town, despite all of this technology.
All right, so you're... I know you've been following this very closely, and we've talked about this. One of the questions that we've raised is, whose idea for coal energy on Goat Island? You're saying that this is something that we should also look at?
Yes, it's something we should look at, because if the Chinese are net importers of coal, and based on my reading of the Jamaican papers, the Ministry of Energy, if that's the correct term, was promoting coal from when the new government got in. Who raised what to whom? And that's what I'm asking at this point. And also, how come no steps have been taken to implement clean energy solutions during the past 4 or 5 years that the new government has been in power? Is it 3 years? I forget now.
Something like that.
But that the government's been in power, because you can build solar plants in 12 to 18 months. You can build geothermal plants in 24 months. One 16-megawatt geothermal plant in Nevada was built in 9 months. And so why aren't these steps being taken? Tidal energy, which can produce, there's a tidal energy plant in France which produces 200 megawatts, and you're basically using potential energy. If the tide's raised by about 7 meters, the tide, it could produce the energy in that instance. And so, again, that plant was installed when? It took about 2 years for that plant to be installed. So why haven't these steps been taken so solutions can be offered?
So a lot of what we're hearing from, and you've been listening closely, your background is also Jamaican, as you talk about your people are from Jamaica, and you've been following this very, very closely. What is the thing that bothers you most about all of this?
The lack of intellectual curiosity, frankly, among the ministers in the technical ministries. Again, my day job was in the automotive industry, and I was able to research this, in about, 10 to 12 hours' time. And the fact is, what I specifically focused on researching was energies or solutions that have already been installed. And that way, because it seems to me that the government in Jamaica is very risk-averse. So you want to show them things that have already been done, things that are not pie in the sky, and things that have been done pretty quickly. I mean, you have a place like Zimbabwe that's under sanctions, and they're installing solar plants that are 100 megawatts for $160 million U.S., which, relatively speaking, is not that much money, and the payback comes very quickly, especially with a place like Jamaica, which has the third highest energy cost in the world.
But that should probably take us back to the question you raised about who raised what to whom. And whose idea was it for coal energy, for a coal plant on Goat Island? And you're saying that the government of Jamaica has been talking about this for a very, very long time.
That's right. And again, why would they bring this up in a place with the topography of Jamaica?
Why do you say that? Explain that to us.
In the sense that, again, the mountains would have a tendency to trap the smog. You know, Jamaica, in a way, in terms of topography, is very much like L.A., Los Angeles, where you have the smog issue. And again, you see that from the car emissions when you fly into Kingston. You see that from the car emissions in Spurtree Hill and Mandeville. And it's not the bauxite plants, because those haven't been operating at full tilt for a while now. So, again, when you add the coal to the mix, it's really going to make things very difficult for the citizens of Jamaica, if you ask me.
A caller wants to know, if not coal, what? But you've been talking about that. The caller wasn't listening. But so go over for us. If not coal, then what?
You have solar energy, and there's two types of solar. You have solar, you have photovoltaic power, and you have thermal energy. And thermal energy, you're basically heating a liquid. And it's easier to store that energy at night. So you can have 24/7 solar power. They have a plant in Spain called Solana. You have it's called Gem Solar, and then you have another plant in Arizona that was just opened that does this. Solar power, you can use batteries for photovoltaic cells. Geothermal power, I think at least 12 geothermal sites have been identified in Jamaica that can produce significant energy, and I think also you have hydropower, and I believe it's the Rio Grande River Basin that has up to 50 megawatts of potential to do all this stuff. And again, whatever loans the government is getting, why aren't the loans being used for things that can produce positive returns in excess of the interest rates of the loans, so Jamaica can move forward? Because the expense of the energy, one, the potential for pollution, two, makes Jamaica's products uncompetitive.
It seems to me that at a time when China is moving away, or trying to, at least, I don't know if you heard the discussion we carried last week came from China TV, and they are hard-pressed to move away from coal energy, clean coal technology aside. They're hard-pressed to do that. This is what they're looking at, and they're looking towards solar power. That it seems strange to me at a time that when they're doing that, understanding why they need to do that, that they would then export this idea of coal technology, of coal power to Jamaica. Have you been looking at China in Africa? You mentioned Zimbabwe, and we know China is heavily involved in Zimbabwe. And what is the relationship between Zimbabwe's now going into solar technology at the rate that they're going into it, and China in Zimbabwe?
Well, of the 300 megawatt plants that Zimbabwe is building, 2 of those have been awarded to Chinese firms. A third one has been awarded to a black-owned indigenous Zimbabwean firm. But Zimbabwe is very clear that this is a partnership and not and they're not a junior partner in this. That's why they have their indigenization requirements, where Zimbabwean companies are supposed to own 51% of whatever joint ventures occur there. And the fact is that, to use kind of a colloquial term, Jamaica has to realize that they are the pretty girl at the dance here. They can choose their partners as they want to choose, because the advantage Kingston provides is it's the largest deep water harbor in the world. So that way the Chinese don't have to dredge it, which could cost billions of dollars. You know, China wants to expand the Panama Canal, and they're building a canal in Nicaragua right now. So the reason Jamaica is being approached is because Jamaica has something to offer, and Jamaica has to act like they have something to offer. So, you know, to me, it's like going to market in the morning. You know, just because the seller offers something at a price doesn't mean I have to accept that price as a consumer.
But even a few years ago, and this is way off tangent, but I'm going to say it in a way. A few years ago, we did an extended series on prostitution in Jamaica and so on, and exotic clubs. And what we found with the women, they understood very clearly what they had to offer. So even at that level, they were able to leverage their relationships with these so-called big men who were paying and made sure that they got what they wanted. So even at that level of prostitution, they understood what they had to offer. Jamaica, being that kind of a lady, it would appear right now in terms of trade and international relations, you're saying that Jamaica has somehow missed its importance as a partner in its relationship with China and is just lying down.
Yes, that's very true. And number two, when it comes to clean energy, China's not the only game in town. The Germans produce a lot of clean energy, and you can leverage the competition between the Chinese and the Germans to get the best deal in terms of getting these technologies into Jamaica. And frankly speaking, it's my observations, in addition to even what John Henry Clark has said, Jamaica has produced some of the most technical talent in the world out of any African country in the world, with the exception of Nigeria. And you have all these technicians that can easily understand and apply these technologies. Why is the talent not being used in a way that can benefit Jamaican people?
I keep going back to the question you asked in reference to Goat Island and coal on Goat Island, that this might have been, that we have to raise that question, that this could very well have been Jamaica's idea to use coal on Goat Island. We want answers to that. We're just throwing the question out. Was this, did this idea for coal on Goat Island come from Jamaica, or did China posit this idea? This is a question that has not really been asked or answered.
Exactly. And then the other question I have to ask is, in technical ministries, you need technical people running those ministries. And let's take China, for example. They've had this massive expansion in the past couple decades, and the majority of their Politburo are engineers. So, and you even take Angola. Dos Santos was an engineer. And let's even use the Angola example. I was watching a movie last week called Made in Angola, and they talk about how they signed an IMF agreement. However, they were permitted under the auspices of that agreement to increase social spending. Well, why is that? Angola has oil, and they use oil as a leverage in their negotiations to basically say, hey, if so-and-so American company wants an oil contract, then the IMF has to be a little bit kinder in their demand.
Yes.
Right. And so, again, this is my opinion, but based on my observation, it seems like both parties are a little bit too eager to engage these multilateral institutions without using leverage in these negotiations. And they haven't sat down and take a true assessment of what natural resources Jamaica has and how can it be leveraged to make sure some of these negotiations aren't as one-sided as they are.
Kwame, I want to thank you very much. The conversation has been illuminating, believe me. So much we've learned from you. You've raised some questions that we're going to continue to raise, and we're going to seek answers to also. And from the responses that we're seeing on the social media, we know that lots of persons are keyed in and clued into what you're saying and thinking outside of the box now to say, how come? Thank you very much, Kwame. I appreciate that. We'll keep in touch with you. We'll continue to talk to you about this and other issues as they arise. Thanks for your expertise.
All right, you have a good rest of the day.
All right, you too. All right, Kwame Pianka there talking to us live from the United States. Once again, Kwame, an expert in these issues that he's talking about here, has worked in nuclear energy. He's a trained engineer and a chemical engineer. And also a Pan-Africanist, thank God for that. He's worked also with the Comanche Park Nuclear outside of Fort Worth, Texas, and also worked on retrofitting piping system on one of those nuclear reactors at the plant. And he's currently in the automotive industry in design engineering, manufacturing engineering, and finance. but he's been following this very, very closely, asking the right questions. And once again, for those persons who are saying, we are xenophobic and we don't want China here, that's a bag of bull. That is rubbish. We think that as critical thinkers, we must ask the questions. We welcome the investment. We welcome the interaction. We welcome the trade. Nothing wrong with that. It's a globalization. We don't have no problem with it. But we must be equal partners in this process. We can be part of the globalization process, or we can be globalized as we are allowing ourselves to be. But we must determine whether we are partner in this or whether we are the other P word. Quick break. We'll be right back.
They always cuss.
Coal train seems to be making its way to Goat Island.
The coal train that brought them to Johannesburg.
The coal train. Ain't nothing good about the coal train. Nothing healthy about the coal train. All right, my good friend and colleague Olimata Tall has joined me in the studio. Going to be talking about the Gambia, the 11th International Roots Festival, May 9 to 17 in the Gambia. And then later on the program, still to come, we're going to be speaking with Devon Evans and Queen Mother Samad about 100 years of Garveyism. Good morning to you, Oli Matatal. Good morning. Greetings, my sister. How are you?
Good morning. Greetings, Andrea. Greetings, Jamaica. Greetings, the world.
All right, I know you've been very busy, Oli, and here comes my sister Isis Miller. I'm very happy to have them in the studio, even if it's for 15 minutes. All right, so let me do this. All right, so Isis Miller and Oli Matatal now joining me in the studio to talk a little bit about the 11th International Roots Festival. It's on May 9 to 17. It's in the Gambia, and we're going. Jamaica is heading to the Gambia for the 11th International Roots Festival. And Oli, a lot of people don't know this. Well, I think they know by now that you are Gambian.
Right.
Quickly, Oli, a little bit about your background. Quick.
Well, my father is Gambian. My mother is from Tuskegee, Alabama. I come from a very strong lineage of activism. My mother was the first female political prisoner during the 60s. Angela Davis wrote a book in the 70s called If They Come in the Morning and spoke about my mother's case. She was the editor of the Burning Spear newspaper and a part of the Uhuru movement in Florida, where they fought against police brutality and rights for black people. And so she was framed, and they fought her case and organized. There was marches all over the country, Free Connie Tucker campaign, and she was freed. So, and then my dad is also one of the original members of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So all of my life, I grew up under people like Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, Brother Willie Ricks, Brother Mukasa, Geronimo Pratt, Chokwe Lumumba that recently passed away. I just come from a very strong movement family, and so that's why I am the way that I am today.
I know, and you are certainly following in their footsteps, isn't she, Isis?
Absolutely.
Or do I have the wrong microphone? Sorry, Isis, yes. Yeah, say that again, Isis.
I said she certainly is, and I'm following right back of her. Trust me.
I'm telling you, it's an army. And this army now is heading to Gambia for the 11th International Roots Festival. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk to Oli about the Roots Festival itself. But your involvement in this is from what level, Isis?
Well, a couple of years ago, when I met Oli, we were planning to do this before, but I think we got a late start, so it didn't really manifest in terms of gathering, the people from the diaspora there. But, of course, she's a revolutionary, and she continues to go all these years. And then this year in particular, she approached me along with the Ministry of Tourism from Gambia to do promotions from this side, to help persons to travel there, whether it be just everyday people, artists, persons who are entrepreneurs. We're inviting everyone to be a part of this, and so that is my role, to help to gather and move.
All right, and it's a gathering of no mean order.
Yes.
The Roots Festival in Gambia, give me the background to that, Ole. What is this Roots Festival?
The Roots Festival began in 1996. This year we're staging the 11th edition, and it comes out of the whole legacy of Alex Haley's Roots edition, where Kunta Kinte was stolen from, captured and stolen and taken from his village in Jufure in the Gambia and brought to other Americas, and talks about his life legacy. The festival itself commemorates the legacy of our people and our ancestry, and it talks about the enforced enslavement and transportation of millions of Africans to the Americans, the Caribbeans, Brazil, and Europe. So sisters and brothers from the diaspora will be coming to the Gambia from May 9th to the 17th to heal around the transatlantic slave trade, to dialogue, to build bridges, to communicate, to attend different functions. There'll be rites of passage, there'll be banquets, there'll be traditional excursions. I mean, so many different activities that's going to be going on for the week. But most importantly, like I said, is to build those bridges between Africa and the diaspora so that we can begin to move forward and really begin to heal and solve some of the problems that many of us face throughout the world.
All right, and for here in Jamaica, we're inviting persons to be part of the 11th International Roots Festival this year. How are we doing that, Isis, and what are we saying to persons in terms of those who are interested in being part of this?
Okay, well, we kind of started disseminating the information on Friday at the Woman Vision event, because Ole Matatal was one of our messengers there, and she was able to give information. So what we're doing tomorrow is we're having a meeting that's going to be held at 5 o'clock. We call it the African Village. That's by Regal Plaza, Cafe Africa, and Veggie Meals on Wheels. All right, right at the corner of Eureka and Ripon Road. Mm-hmm. And so we'll meet there for persons who want to get more information about the travel information, about how they can travel there, and what the event is about, and the details of the event, and how we can gather and move for May. They can meet us there on that date, and we're going to have regular meetings for persons to come through as well.
We don't have a lot of time. I mean,
no, we don't. We don't.
April.
Yeah, we don't really have a lot of time, but we're utilizing the airways like here and other places to make sure we disseminate the information.
And just so that you know, it's an international effort. The promotional committee consists of over 20 to 30 members all throughout the United States, Europe, here, etc. So because of the relationship between Jamaica and the Gambia, in 2000, my president sent his plane over here to take 18 members from Barmelli family and friends, and also flew to Cuba, Grenada, and a few other countries, and brought these visitors to Gambia for the Roots Festival. And those individuals...
I wish he could do that again.
I know, because we've been talking about Roots, and it'd be great for him. But you know, Andrew, after what happened to the Malaysia flight, I don't know if I want to be on one flight. I think I might have to have a little bit of diversity on the flight.
So you're going to put us on different flights?
No. It's not that we're going to put you on different flights. There's two things going on. Yes. There'll be departures from Washington Dulles on the 7th. For individuals who have U.S. visas, you'll be able to get that package. It's $2,875. And what that includes, it includes hotel, it includes ground transportation, it includes flights, it includes breakfast, and includes all the activities during the week. And we'll be special invited guests of the president for that.
So that's accommodation. That's everything. It's accommodation.
Except for food. Dinner. Dinner is not included in everything.
2,000? How much?
$2,875.
That's reasonable. So it's that's air transportation, ground transportation, accommodations, and
breakfast.
Breakfast.
Yeah, and that's flying into Dakar. And we'll go into Dakar. We'll go to Gora Island for one day, do some healing at the door, no return, because they said we wouldn't return, so we got to show them that we're returning.
Right.
So we go by land to the Gambia. From the Gambia, we'll begin the festivities with the Roots Festival. And that's going to be so many different things. Like I said, workshops, drumming and dancing, gala dinners, going to the Makasutu cultural villages, the rites of passage, marketplace, bartering, buying, just getting to bond with the people, reconnect, healing from the transatlantic slave trade. It's a lot.
So this is you're going to Dakar, move from Dakar by land into Gambia, and that's from Washington.
That's from Washington.
All right. So where, for those who don't have American visas?
For those that don't have American visas, we're still trying to put it together. We're working with
that would be like me,
Yeah, exactly. Now the Gambian government is going to help everybody get there. The Gambian government is going to help everybody get their visas for Africa. So the issue is we're looking at the best way. We're looking at either going from here to France to Senegal because it's 4-way, or we could do another one, maybe London. From London to Gambia is 4 hours, a straight flight. So we're still trying to weigh our options. I know by next week we should really begin to center it. Now there's a whole delegation from London being headed by Huey Newton, who is the international national black national.
Huey Newton?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Huey Rose.
Okay.
I was like, wait a minute. Are we talking Black Panther here?
No, but he is a Black Panther.
Oh, he is a Black Panther.
Yeah, he is a Black Panther.
Okay.
He's with the new Black Panther Party, Huey Rose, and he's a great organizer. I've worked with him a lot in the UK, and he's got over like 30 to 40 people going from London itself. So
it sounds exciting to be traveling from London, right? I think
absolutely.
Many people are going.
Yes,
right. But the U.S. delegation is big too. You got people coming from Atlanta. You got people coming from New York. You got people from L.A. It's people coming from all over the world.
So only don't we have a route to Cuba and then Cuba to?
That's the way they went the last time with the president's plane, right?
But that was different because it was
private.
The president's plane. You understand what I'm saying? This is different because we're actually going through airlines. So what would really be good, honestly, it would be good for like Fly Jamaica or any of these airlines to really begin to think about direct flights to Africa. It doesn't make sense that we have to always go through a European country to go to Africa, because you have to fly over Africa to go to Europe and then come back to Africa. So it's like, I mean, what are you doing here? You're wasting gas, you're wasting resources, and you're wasting time.
And I think what's going to happen is that once China is entrenched in like the Caribbean, because China is so heavily involved in Africa, that we're going to see these direct flights from the Caribbean to Africa, and it won't be our doing, it will be China's doing, and that will be a shame.
Price, but like I said, we're working with the travel agency. It's not going to be any more different. We actually want to make it a little bit cheaper, so we can make it cheaper for people. That's what we want to do. Now, for those of you that are really enthusiastic about going to Africa and you just don't have the money, this is a community collective. This is a national collective. This is an African collective, and I think that we got to pull on a lot of these companies here, like Digicel, Grace Kennedy. Companies that may be interested in building a relationship with Gambia when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to importing and exporting. Just when it comes to just building those economic bridges, get some of these companies to help and come to the table. Get involved. Guinness is in Gambia. There are tons of Bigga. Bigga is in Gambia.
Bigga's in Gambia?
Yeah, of course. Red Stripe is in Gambia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course. You watch. And Red Stripe is cheaper in Gambia than here. So, yes.
Okay. That's good. We go to Gambia for a red stripe.
Yes.
So I think we gotta talk to the companies and convince them to work with people to help sponsor people. Let's see Digicel do a scratch off competition, and whoever wins a free trip to Africa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's so many initiatives,
things, right?
Yes.
Then you got all these celebrities here who make tons of money when they fly
and sing
out
about Africa
every weekend. Some of y'all from these camps sponsor one or two people, either from your family, from your community, from your school, yourself, exactly. Yes. Do an essay competition, and whoever wins the essay competition gets a free trip to Africa. So there's different things that we can do. Raise money, do a concert. I remember when I was younger, because this is like probably my 10th trip taking people to Africa since 1994. But when I was really, really young in 1994, I took 17 high school students, and we would go on the corner with a can, and we would have the people donate money,
make contributions,
make contributions, or we would go to organizations, we would go to functions, and we would raise our money. So just come up with creative ideas to raise these funds.
In the meantime, Isis, how do they get to you? I mean, I know for those persons who can't make it to the meeting tomorrow, but would want to go, they're hearing, and Oli's really doing a good job of creating a lot of excitement around this. Every time you talk, me just getting goose pimples, like, I gotta go
know.
Yeah. So how? I mean, how do they? Can they call me? What's the number?
Well, there's a number that, of course, we're using for this particular.
Yeah, the number we're using is 554-8969.
554-8969.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
and my email address is ISIS, which is ISIS, T as in Tom, A as in Apple, _ FARI, FARI at yahoo.com.
And let me give mine.
So,
Mine
so
is,
hold on, say that again, ISIS. Just say all of it without spelling. ISIS.
ISIS _ FARI at yahoo.
Okay,
.com.
ISIS _ FARI at yahoo.com.
Yeah, let me give mine too. It's Olimata, OLIMATTA.
Now you can start calling Olimata Tall already.
But Kabu, that's a good sign.
You know,
it is
that's a good sign.
and by the way, as you said Kabu, by the way.
Kabu.
I know that there's a place in Gambia called Kabu.
Yes.
And it has an interesting history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, right. So
I can't wait to hear about, how your name came about, Mahat. I know you're going to be talking about it soon.
Mahat Karu.
Yeah.
It sounds comedic.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
it is
Asar
comedic.
Aset. Oh, the phones are ringing. Okay, it's Olimata, OLIMATTA at gmail.com, OLIMATTA@gmail.com. And there's just a few surprises that I just want to mention.
Boy, all the phones are ringing.
I want to mention in November when the Ministry of Tourism came to New York promoting the Roots Festival at the African Tourism Association, and the president of Uganda was there. I had an opportunity to meet him and meet a lot of different people who were really involved with promoting Africa on a large scale. They asked Sizzla to become the music ambassador for the Roots Festival, and he's agreed to it. So there are a number. They're still figuring out his role exactly and some of the things that he's going to be doing. But he's very elated about the title and being music ambassador. They've also invited Erykah Badu and M1 from Dead Prez, but they haven't given them a title. And they've also invited Dr. Julius Garvey, but they haven't given him a title as well.
Right.
And actually, this is the first.
I also received an invitation, and I didn't get a title.
No, you did. Andrea, you did get a title.
What's my title?
Your title was promoter.
And so am I. We're promoters, Kabu. Kabu, we are promoters.
Kabu, you did get a title.
Here's my letter. I brought my letter for proof.
I do have an official letter.
Yeah, you have an official
promoter.
Right.
Okay.
Official promoter.
Right.
Oh,
Not just promoter.
Okay,
right. And I'm the Roots Festival publicist.
Okay. Scusa, por favor. I apologize. All right. So
and we're encouraging, I'm sorry, Kabu, we're encouraging artists who can't make it to link us up, because they might want some of their CDs or the information together with it to that festival. It's a good opportunity for promotion, so they can also link us in that way as well. But we're encouraging artists to be a part of this. You sing about Africa, you talk about Africa, so let's walk to Africa. Now, let's walk the walk to get to Africa.
That's
now.
right. Talk to talk.
And we saw we have to walk out of here, but listen, this is one trip that I want to make, because I want to go to Africa with some sisters.
Yes.
In a serious kind of way.
Yes.
No
it's
joke.
going to be a beautiful experience.
We're looking forward.
Yeah.
Especially
brothers too, but grounding with my sisters.
That's
It's going to be a really good experience, especially when we go to James Island. And James Island is the equivalent of Goree Island, and that's where all the dungeons, the slave dungeons are. And we'll be having some very, healing moments there to reconnect with those spirits that really need to rest, because we still haven't rested a lot of those spirits from millions and millions of our ancestors who died during the Middle Passage during the Ma'afa.
Well said, Ole Matatal. Thank you, Isis. Thank you, Ole.
You're so welcome.
I'm very happy to have had you in the studio this morning,
We're
even
happy
for the
to be
short
here.
moment.
Yes.
And we'll hear much more about this as time goes on. We're heading to Gambia, May 9th to 17th. It means we're leaving before the 9th. We're leaving on the 7th.
The 7th.
To the 17th for the 11th International Roots Festival in the Gambia. It's on.
That's right. And for those that want to stay longer, we will accommodate you. And
There
for
you
those that want to stay, period, we will help you
There you go.
repatriate.
There you go.
554-8969. For those of you that want to build businesses, buy land, we will help you. 554-8969. Don't give up an island for a continent.
No way.
There you go. All right. So
Thank
we'll hear
you.
much more about this. Call IRFM for the numbers and the email addresses. Thank you, Isis. Thank you,
You're
Ole
welcome.
Matatal.
Bless you.
All right. Lana Gay Franklin, and our sister who might be heading to the Gambia, if she can get the time off, is here with the local and international headlines coming up right after this.
Marcus Garvey said, we shall lead the way, calling on my generation could you say what's best for me? Things not what it used to be. Black is who I choose to be. How could I forget what's mine? Let's reclaim the Black Star Line.
All right, 100 years of Garveyism, and we're joined in the studio by well-known Garveyite, journalist extraordinaire, senior journalist, Devon Evans. Devon, my brother.
Morning, Angela.
Morning. And we're going to be joined on the phone lines in a little while by Queen Mother Mariam Samad. But Devon, 100 years, I deliberately said 100 years of Garveyism, because even though we know it's more people are zooming in on the UNIA, I think we have to broaden the discussion away from just the organization itself and who was Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey. His philosophy, we have to take it outside of just the organization itself, which is 100 years since the formation of the UNIA. Talk us a little bit about that, Devon.
Yes, but as you said before, we have to focus before that, because Garvey was long after slavery started, so that is where the transgression and the atrocities began against us. But looking at 100 years of UNIA, and we have seen that again time has caught up with us, because over the years we have been focusing on Marcus Garvey, and we have been highlighting the life of Marcus Garvey through his birthday and through National Heroes Day. But we never look into it and see that it was the UNIA which Garvey founded, and that was the organization responsible for all of these achievements. And so while we were just focusing on Garvey, we missed the road in terms of looking at the UNIA, and in the broad sense of UNIA in terms of cultural development, educational development, focus on Africa and the people in the diaspora.
And so this gives us a chance this year, if we have never done it before, in terms of, systematically looking at this organization, the UNIA, looking at how it operated, looking at the people who were involved, the wider membership of the UNIA, the workers within the UNIA, and to say how they achieved as much as they achieved under the leadership of Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey, that this year, more than any other year, gives us an opportunity to do that, to look back, and then to look at where we are now within that context, and to determine how we move forward 100 years after. What are some of the, you highlighted some of the areas within the UNIA that we need to focus on, Devon. Let us talk about that. The composition itself of the UNIA.
Well, looking at the UNIA now, because the composition of the UNIA in the earlier part had a lot to do with the atrocities against Marcus Garvey. Because you know that when Marcus Garvey started the UNIA and was in full swing, the United States government, through the FBI, started to recruit a number of black people and force them into the UNIA, competent black people who, when they got into the UNIA, they got positions, senior positions with the organizations, and so from then on, you find the UNIA becoming a victim of all type of circumstances. And some of these things here, people blaming Marcus Garvey, he couldn't handle finances, he couldn't this. All of these things were done properly, but people within the UNIA were there as operatives of the U.S. And we see today, we have the UNIA here in Jamaica giving semblance of what the UNIA was in 1960, 1918. We have a UNIA in Jamaica that seems to be in all-inclusive. We don't see any branches. In fact, in the 100 year, it's shameful to know that in the 100th year of the UNIA, I think we are only hearing about the Kingston branch.
Well, there's also one in Manchester.
That's Resource. Well, Resource, that's a Liberty Hall. Valedictorian.
So that's not UNIA, that's Liberty
Hall.
Right. What we want to get there, and I think later on in the conversation, and even as the weeks go by, to look at where the UNIA is now, because to me it is not just Jamaica where this is happening.
No.
It's happening across, in so many areas where the UNIA was, and we even see now, what's happening with the breakaway. And the controversy. But I want Devon to look seriously at what Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey had in mind. What was the reasoning behind forming such an organization?
To empower the people. And to empower them through various ways. In fact, entertainment, the creation of Edelweiss Park, where today we have our DJs, our singers, musicians. They do not realize that was where it started. We have the creation of organized uniform groups. You have the Marcus Garvey Black Cross nurses and those other things where we see the Red Cross groups now taking over the schools. It should have been the Black Cross groups that we have in all of these schools. Lobbying groups to encourage people to prepare themselves education-wise for the challenges that we are facing now. These are some of the things that the UNIA zoomed on economic development when it looked at creating the Black Star Line steamshipping company so that we can get involved in international export and import trade. So it's wide. The UNIA focus was so wide. If we had adopted it and followed that course, this country would not have been in the situation that it is now.
We're talking about 100 years of Garvey's and 100 years of the UNIA. The centenary of the UNIA. Can you believe that? 100 years this year since the formation of Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey's UNIA. Take a quick break. We come back. We want to be joined on the phone line, so we come back by Mother Samad and want to look at, the UNIA itself, the structure of the organization, how it functioned, how it worked. Right after this.
Sentinel Cold and Flu gets
Running African, reuniting the African family for development.
All right, Devon Evans, Garveyite and journalist, is in the house with me. We're talking about the UNIA. We're talking about Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And this is kicking off a series of discussion programs that we'll be having throughout the year, in the 100th year of the UNIA. Devon Harris Campbell, speaking about the UNIA, said it was the most dynamic mass movement across territorial borders among the African peoples, and that after the birth of Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and now, and I'm putting this in because he had said 7 decades at that time, but 100 years after the founding of the UNIA, it is still possible to say that Garveyism occupies a central place in the struggle for democracy, dignity, and social transformation. He was quoting from Rupert Lewis and Brian. But I think the point you're making.
Yes, it's a very profound statement, because where we are, remember that we find Garvey created this movement. In fact, even in America, you remember that the black people in America envied Garvey for his insight, the creation of the NAACP, and how they fought when they, as a black group, should have come together, join the UNIA, and create visions and structures and future development for black Americans. They fought against Garvey. So it has been a thing that people, we need to look into ourselves. In fact, we need to start here in Jamaica. Because when we go travel over the world, people look to us Jamaicans as leaders when we are not living up to the expectation. I'm ashamed when I travel even to some of the Eastern Caribbean countries and see how people adore Marcus Garvey, and we are here just taking it for granted.
We want to go to the phone lines to speak with Queen Mother Mariam Samad, a Garveyite herself, and someone who was born into the movement started by Mwalimu Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Want to talk to her on the phone lines, and as soon as she comes through, we're standing by for that. 100 years. The date of the formation of the UNIA. Do you have it there, Devon? Is it June? Was it in June that it was started?
It's history, and history is very distorted when it comes to Garvey, because we heard about August, I think sometime August 14, around that time.
All right. On the phone lines, Queen Mother Mariam Samad. Mother Samad, good morning. Thank you very much for joining
darling.
us.
Tell that young lady to stop calling you Andrea.
I'm giving them time.
Okay.
Yes. All right, Mother Samad, we've had so many discussions over so many moons about Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey. But here we are now in the 100th year of the formation since the formation of the UNIA. We're saying 100 years of Garveyism. It's a year-long conversation that we're going to be having. So I want to start here to just tap into your memory a little bit and your studies to talk about what was the UNIA, how it was set up, what was the structure of the UNIA, what did Mr. Garvey have in mind?
Exciting, darling, exciting. Now, if the organization is 100 years old, and I am 91, I was born right in the midst of everything.
Yes.
The fact that we, the children, had our own birth certificates in the organization. We had black dolls. We learned a preamble, fantastic preamble. And it became frightening, to the big nations. What kind of organization is this? And the young people, we had our own school at the weekend. We were informed of the facts that strengthened the race. And then one of the things that we learned was not to call. We had to use certain words to, be friendly with the surroundings. But we learned in the organization that the word race really meant Royal African Colonizing Enterprises, an organization in England. Mm-hmm. So we didn't use it in the organization. We used the word people.
Yes.
It was exciting, a really exciting organization, and still is to this day.
Mm-hmm. For our younger people who are listening, because I've had these conversations with you, and we've gone through, almost like with a fine-tooth comb, looking at the structure of the organization itself. We've talked about the nurses. Devon mentioned that before. Talk to us about that, Mother Samar, the structure of UNIA. What were some of the elements that came together? What are some of the departments, and if you will, that Mr. Garvey brought together in terms of overseeing this great plan that he had to reunite the African family for development?
Well, I don't know if you were talking about the African Legions.
Yes.
Yes. The Black Cross nurses.
Yes.
And he was very proud to admit that it didn't form in the New York area, the Black Cross nurses, that he really got it from a Philadelphia group. Mm-hmm. And this was showing that he was amenable to listening to others. You see, he's being accused in one of the movies that I'm in of not listening. Mr. Garvey listened to everyone and everything. We had the nurses. We had teachers. My mother was head of the children's group. We had what we had.
And as you recall that, you talk about the children's group, you talk about the women's group, you talk about the different elements, Devon. I mean, Mr. Garvey bringing together, all elements of black people together, all aspects, all areas of our social, educational, political.
That's right. We had songwriters, men who wrote songs for the organization. We had poets. We had newspapers. His was one of the most important newspapers, black in the world at that time. I remember as a teenager sitting in the Garvey Club at 169 West 133rd Street and seeing South American, white-skinned men coming into the organization and going under the stairs with Mr. Safar and rolling the papers into their waistlines to get them out of the country. Mm-hmm. I tell you, I keep saying that organization was so fantastic. The friends of ours who belong to the churches around us and who couldn't join the organization, they looked at us in amazement. We were like a whole new... J. Edgar Hoover found out that we were something special and that we were being led by a man who really loved his people with no apology.
Mother Samad, I have Devon Evans in the studio with me. Devon...
Morning, Mother Samaj.
Good morning, darling. I couldn't hear you because they didn't cut me into the program, you know?
I'm sorry about
but
that.
I'm quite sure that you were good. What they did.
Yes, because I want you to just remind the listeners that Garvin not only published his newspapers in English, but in other languages, so that people in the diaspora in other countries, Spanish and French-speaking countries,
why they
could read it.
worship him, the Cubans and, you know, the different people from the Spanish-speaking country. In fact, you even had people from Africa, you know, with languages that didn't cut into the English language, who were fed the papers by people who could read, just like here in Jamaica, I heard. One person would read it to a group of people, and then all of them would fan out into the areas of the country. You know?
Yes, so I said Garvey's work transcend language barriers. In fact, it encompasses the whole idea of uniting the people for development.
That's right.
What level of organization must have been in place for that to have happened? For the UNIA to be the kind of force that it ended up being. What must have gone into organizing this?
Lawyers. Can you imagine lawyers of that day? Doctors, teachers, qualified teachers in the organization putting these things together. It was no scumbag organization, as they try to call it. A bunch of dummies coming together. You had very brilliant people coming together in the organization.
Yeah, visionaries.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Mother Samad, your radio is a bit loud in the background.
Yes. Where's some?
It's coming back at us. So we're going to take a quick break.
African, reuniting the African family for development.
We're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. 100 years of Garveyism, 100 years of the UNIA. We're kicking off a series of conversations about that, and this would be one of our first as we go through the year, looking at the UNIA, looking at Garveyism, and talking about Morlemu Marcus Messiah Garvey in this space. In the studio, Garveyite and journalist Devon Evans. On the phone lines, Queen Mother Mariam Samad, as we look back to go forward, talking about talk about the social and the political situation that existed around the time 100 years ago when Mr. Garvey when Mr. Garvey said...
They were still lynching black people.
Exactly, and here you were saying, Mother Samad, that, you know, we should look upon our blackness as a sense of pride and not as a stigma.
Aye, yes. Yes, with no apology, darling. Listen to that group, the Royal African Legions, the Black Horse Nurses.
Yes.
We had the African Girl and Boy Scouts. We had juveniles. Another section of the groups that, you know, didn't belong to any particular group. Hundreds of children following. We had horsemen. We had 5 ships, shipyards. You know, we had choirs, mass parades. Oh, we had information from J.A. This is within the 100 years. Information from J.A. Rogers, who turned out to be Jamaican, I think.
Yes.
He was, and we also had Carter G. Woodson's words. Oh, my girl, I tell you, why am I at 91 so thrilled about this organization? I heard you all going off to Africa in May. I can't go because I have arthritis, but I sure would love to go. That's the spirit of Garveyism. You know, you didn't back down.
So, Queen Mother, aren't you disappointed about the achievements that we have made at 100 years?
You know, really, I'm not. You know, listen to Dr. Professor Shepard this morning. Look at all of the engineers. Listen to all of the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers. I think for people who were drugged, you know, across an ocean, out of everything that they knew as their culture. That we have become fantastic. You know, that's why I was telling the youngsters the other day. Of course, they don't approve of what I'm saying. You don't have to ask that white man for nothing because he's tricky. Anytime he gives you 1 cent, he follows to get 2 cents out of you. So be very careful, because in my opinion, I think we've done fantastic. And I'm not talking about the boys with the braids and the earrings. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the professors. You know, when I look at my people, sometimes I have to cry. I think we're wonderful.
But, and Devon, the reason you ask that question is what? From what perspective you're saying that there's some level of disappointment with where we are at?
Yes, because God set the right foundation, and we know we were on the path to great achievement.
Yes.
But the social areas of development, the organized groups are waning. You know, you mentioned all those groups earlier on. Today, not even in a parish like St. Ann, we remember growing up, we had the Boy Scouts, the Boys Brigade, the Cadets, all of those. These groups are probably on that Marcus Garvey technically see a cadet group. You don't see a Boy Scout, you don't see the Girl Guides anymore apart from Miss Charlie there in Brownstone.
No man, Devon, there are quite a few of that, and as a matter of fact, we've had them, a lot of them here, and they're at the cadet group.
Yeah, but I said
in the high schools. They're in most of the high schools.
And Byron Moore, who passed away recently, he had a wonderful setup here in Kingston with the Black Cross nurses, you know, and choirs. I've attended quite a few fairs. But the fact that, I don't know, all of this mechanism has come into our lives. Because I remember when I first came to this country to live in 1976, I had been here 5 times before, that people used to walk on Saturday from the next parish over, walk on Saturday mornings to bring vegetables and things.
We should share that, because I'd asked if it was June or August, so thank you very much.
It was
July 1914.
Yes.
And also someone has called in to say there's an active UNIA division or branch in Spanish Town, Old Harbour Road. The president is Mr. Cookhorn, and they have meetings every second Sunday from 3 to 6. But I want to go back to the point that Devon was making, because I understand you know, the place where the question is coming from, and I think for us to answer that question, we have to look back at Mr. Garvey, to look back at the UNIA, and to say what was the idea behind this consciousness that he brought with him? What was the idea behind the formation of the UNIA? Talking about self-governance, about self-reliance, and so on. And even from a political perspective, where we are today is that we're still dependent and so reliant on the West that for us that should be a level of great concern. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Devon, in terms of looking at what Mr. Garvey had in mind, what we could have achieved had we stayed on that path, or you know, because we know there were quite a few things happening that kind of knocked us off that path in terms of external interference. But had we managed to stay on that path, what we might have achieved, where would you rather see us as a people?
First, Garvey's vision came out of how they treated us starting through slavery. We're an enslaved race, and so we have to lift ourselves from there. And so education was where he started out. And in going forward, Garvey realized that we as a race, we need commerce. We need empowerment. You know, when you talk about empowerment, without money, it seems as if you don't have any power. And so he brought minds together, visionaries together, and say, let us carve this way forward. But you know, the outside world who wants to have things their way, and they brought in things to in the United States, you know, from 1919, the U.S. recruited 5 top black men, including James Wormley Jones, to go into the UNIA to see if they can find a way to get Garvey out of the United States.
That's right. That's right.
And from there, so that trumped up charge of mail fraud started from 1919, and they realized those it couldn't work there, right? So,
well, you know, Devin, one of the things that I have written to Mr. Garvey, in his mails that he left, there should be something from me, and I have mails here from him to my husband. But one of the things, he was just a God bless. I say this, I know people are going to stamp all over my head. Mr. Garvey was a God-blessed man by God, as natural as the man Jesus walked on this earth. It was in him. Mm-hmm. It was nothing that he picked up or, gathered along the way. Mm-hmm. He was born that way to better wherever he was.
And they realized that, so even when Garvey was deported, and they followed him into Jamaica.
That's right.
With charges.
And into England.
Yeah, they sold, yes, because after they were able to sell his properties in Jamaica and leave him broke, and he went to England, it wasn't enough. So they followed him into England.
That's right.
Eventually, they took his life. And,
well, yes, that's true. Let that be known.
Yes, and that must, I say that on all programs because we have all type of accounts of that Queen Mother Samaj, and we must be fulsome when we are speaking about Garvey.
Yes. One of the things Mr. Garvey said that a lot of people don't like this, he said we are our own worst enemy. We are our own worst enemy. Meaning that all that he had brought and given you, you mean you did allow someone to dissuade you? We are our own worst enemy. To this day. I just recently took down the sign off my house. I had the Sankore Nubian Cultural Workshop. And when I saw the behavior of my brothers and sisters in Tivoli, I took it down. Mm-hmm. Because if we followed Mr. Garvey, there could be no Tivoli misbehavior. Mm-hmm. Tivoli, yes. People live there.
You see, Garvey had a vision for the people.
Yes.
And this vision, it was probably those oppressors and those the imperialists who didn't like it.
But can you imagine the man died at 53? I'm 91 and I haven't done anything yet.
And so it just brings back it is time now for we as a people to start to relive these memories, in fact, to revive the spirit of Garvey here in Jamaica and elsewhere where there are Garveyites. The only way we can show that we are true Garveyites today in the 100th anniversary of the UNIA is try and revive the spirit of Marcus Garvey in any way we can.
We have no respect for our elders, number one. I know, because I'm a victim of that.
What would that involve? Devon, in terms of reviving the spirit of Morley Marcus Garvey?
Beginning, Angela, I'm happy you asked that question because I organized a small group we call the Marcus Garvey Support Group. We are going to seek help to rebrand Marcus Garvey Way in St. Anne's Bay. They officially renamed that road in 2009 as Marcus Garvey Way, and up to then nothing has been done. People, you realize that tourists coming all over from overseas and try to find Marcus Garvey Way and get lost, finding themselves in Lime Mall and elsewhere, asking where. So we are planning to...
On top of that, darling, I think what we need to do is look in the mirror and love ourselves. That's what he wanted you to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Look in the mirror and love what you see there.
Yes.
Better it. Improve on it. And if you know better, do better. Mm-hmm. Sister's asking the question just now. That's what we need. Mm-hmm. Look at ourselves.
Let me elaborate a little. What we plan is that we want to put the red, black, and green colors of Marcus Garvey from the main street, there at the corner of the main street and Marcus Garvey Way, all the way to the corner, to the intersection of Marcus Garvey Way and Gully Road. We I'm going to speak with, in fact, I've already written to the parish council to seek their permission, and I'm going to speak with all the property owners along that street, because we want to, on those walls, those empty walls, we want to put Garvey quotation, Garvey portraits, and we don't want this to be done in the hodgepodge. We want professional artists who want to volunteer their service, who want to do this thing on Labor Day, right? This is the rebranding of Marcus Garvey. So professional artists, companies, because it's going to be an international exhibition, because when we rebrand that street, people from all over the world who walk on Marcus Garvey will see these portraits, will read. The school children, the St. Anne's Primary School is just close by. Children need to know these Garvey quotes. Children need to know the various images of Garvey. And so professional artists and people in the entertainment business, you might not be a painter, but you can hire a professional artist and say, go to St. Anne's Way and do a stand-up portrait of Garvey, do a bust of Garvey, things like those. And they can contact me so we can make a rep. This is the people's, and I don't want to go to screen. Yes,
I have 6 gold-framed 23 by 33 pictures of Mr. Garvey done by the original painter of it. His name is slipping me at the moment. And when I send them out, but when I ask people, would they buy one from me? I mean, these are people who have money. Mm-hmm. They look at me and say, And I said, these people are something else. Mm-hmm. I had 50, and I gave out most of them to churches and schools over the years. But the last 10 of them, I had them framed in gold. They are magnificent, worth having in any office, especially, worth having anywhere, but especially in the big offices and the churches. I want to get to Ronnie Thwaites and Richard Biles to look at these things because they have the money to put our first national hero in the front hall of everywhere that they are.
Why is that important, Mother Samad? And what would
important,
what would that do? Yes.
Did I tell you that the time that I went to the Statue of Liberty and there was Mr. Garvey's picture, the whole wall?
No.
Darling, it scared the hell out of me. Yes. I went to the Statue of Liberty in the New York Harbor and there was Mr. Garvey, bigger than any picture of him you have ever seen.
Larger than life picture.
Listen, the white people looked at me and said, did you know him? I said, well, I was born in his organization. Oh, that's wonderful. There's white people.
Yes.
Black people look at me and say, oh, yeah, you're born there. You know?
So it sounds to me as if you both are saying that part of reclaiming our African identity, we can do that through Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey, but also that there has to be a certain level of knowing. In terms of knowing who he was, his image is important. The colors are important. The symbols are important. The teachings are important.
If you have a pencil, darling, put this down.
Yes.
Man, know thyself.
Yes.
Book 1, page 38.
Yes. The proper study.
Man, know thyself.
Yes.
That's in the philosophy and opinion.
Yes.
And the other one is the policy of the black intellectual.
Yes.
They didn't say black. Well, I put black in there.
Yes.
And that's in book 2, page 123. And you will see what Mr. Garvey is telling you.
Do we, as we go along, because we know a lot of what Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey has said, they're in writing, they're on the pages of books and so on, and appear in some cases as if they're now the laws of the Medes and Persians in terms of, where do we begin to develop on this? How do we move this beyond here? Because I'm sure that like Mr. Garvey, like any of the other teachers like Mwalimu, Asajafo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, like so many others, Amir Kakaba and so on, that the idea was you bring it to this level and then we, the children, move it to the next level. How do we move it to the next level?
What you're doing right now, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's why I loved Carl and Tad.
Yes.
Because they fostered us. You know, they're part of the family, and they saw to it that we got out there. And if you don't know, it's because you don't want to know. Because IREFM has been doing it from my God, I think when I was in my, maybe in my 70s or 80s. You've been doing it. There's no excuse for black people not to know, darling.
But that's how IRE has done their bit, Queen Mother, but now we have to move beyond words and we go into action. As I say, rebranding of Marcus Garvey Way. Then we have other foundation. We have Sister Jackie Roots as a Marcus Garvey youth organization there in Discovery Bay. We get involved with these organizations and try to support them in whatever we can. And look out, there cannot be too much Marcus Garvey organization. Right? If a Marcus Garvey organization springs up anywhere in the island, we welcome them. That's why my group is a Marcus Garvey support group. That's why I say everyone, even from IRFM, the Running African team here, because we want to show. Remember, you cannot read any of Marcus Garvey's works and see where Marcus Garvey is waiting on the government to do this or waiting on the IMF to do this. Or is the people get together and do it. And so we need to start and we rebrand Marcus Garvey Way on Labor Day and show them that in the meantime we drop other projects because this is the 100th anniversary.
And then in this 100th year, I think what is also important in terms of along the same line you're talking about, Devon, is a home where Mwalimu was born, where he grew up. And I know that Bruce Golding, former Prime Minister, broke ground there just before he demitted office, and nothing has been done since. And I think it is a shame because when he did that, we were told at the time that the money was made available through the Chase Fund to renovate and to do whatever work that needed to be done there in terms of bringing that to a certain...
What is also
selfishness was in the group, darling.
Queen Mother, what is also shameful is that I got a copy of the 2012 annual report of the Chase Fund. And on page 44, you'll see where during 2011, Chase spent $16 million to renovate Marcus Garvey's birthplace.
Where?
The it was on my desk. I didn't bring it. The Chase Fund report, annual report for 2012 on page 44 shows that the Chase Fund spent in 2011 $16 million to renovate, upgrade Marcus Garvey birthplace, which to date not even a nail has been driven there.
So where is that money? Where is that 16 million?
Remember when Bruce Golding came there, it was $22 million in 2011. Right. And the 2012 report shows that money was spent, that's $16 million. People who can get a copy of the annual report of the Chase Fund for 2012 can read it, page 44 to see.
We're going to need a copy of that.
Right.
My God.
That money, so we have been taken for a ride all over. So it's time we need to go beyond. I've been in this thing for many years. Government.
But to put things in perspective, and you know, politics and politics is not my thing. But to put things in perspective, right after the ground was broken for the refurbishing and the renovation of a home, didn't Bruce Golding leave office like a week after or something like that? I mean, he was not there.
No.
So.
And he also gave a passing shot to Pinnacle, say, government, he left an advice to the government that they should compel Shakoya Pinnacle to for a home of Rastafari. Those are, and nothing has been done since.
Well, there's a new president of Resource, at Resource or something like that. I just heard this week.
Valerie Dixon.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, maybe we need to check in with her because we need some strengthening.
Yes, no. She's a part of my group. I will have to call her because that's why I say we need to come together. My Marcus Garvey support group from even within the diaspora. We're not like some people going to make an all-inclusive club for they and their friends. We need the full support, and we know so Marcus Garvey didn't depend on government to carry out his work. Didn't depend on some other. Right.
I used to have Kwanzas here. This yard had over, 300-400 people years ago. But something got in here, and suddenly people began to spin out in their own little thing, you know? And you say, I wondered, was there somebody here or something in this country here that was doing this wherever Garvey was set up? Suddenly it began to disintegrate. That's what we have to watch for, to see who it is.
What I want to know, Mother Samad and Devon, as we go forward, and I think it's a very interesting, important question that you've asked, because one of the things, the first thing I play every Sunday morning when I come in here as a part of the theme is my sister Tendai talking about to free the mind, to know the enemies, to free the mind, to know the enemy. And Sergeant for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah asks the question. He says, "Do you know who your enemy is?" And I think those are some of the questions that we must ask, even as we try to reclaim our African selves, our African identity, as we go forward, because this is one of the first conversations we're having as we go into continue into the year, the 100th year of Garveyism. What Mother Samad? Thank you. What, Mother Samad, are some of the issues that you would want to see us raise in this space as we talk through the year about 100 years of Garveyism?
Last year, when KAC was so graciously awarded me or rewarded me or something with a great big beautiful plaque, they asked me what was our legacy, and I said, read. We don't read enough. Jamaicans do read because they steal my books. They do read. Yeah, they read. Yes. But we need to read, darling. We need to have reading sessions under trees on the weekend. Yes. Read. Not so much eating and jumping and carrying on foolish, but get serious like Mr. Garvey used to have us. Read. On the park benches in Harlem. You read. Of course, the sandwiches were brought you brought along for your lunch. But all of this, this eating and all of this carrying on and dancing and chicken, we have to stop that and get serious.
And I hope that this point is reaching, and I know it's reaching to a wide cross-section of our listenership, and you can start your own active reading, whether it's under the tree clubs or at the kitchen clubs or on the veranda clubs, and begin to read. Thank you very much, Mother Samad. It's a conversation that will happen, inshallah, dear Valente, as we go through the year, and I'm sure we'll be calling on you again to help us to understand a bit more about Mr. Garvey.
And may the Almighty bless you and keep you well.
Thank you very much.
We need you.
You too, my mother. Thank you
very much. And God bless IRFM.
Thank you. All right, Queen Mother Mariam Samad. Devon, what are some of the issues you want to see raised in this space as we go through?
Well, first of all, I want to remind the people that there will not be another Marcus Garvey. So those of us who are waiting on Garvey to pull us through, we need to pull ourselves through. So we have to focus on for the works of Garvey, some of the ideals of Garvey, and try to bring them forth in a meaningful way. The education that Queen Mother spoke of is very important, but we need to go out there and work. We have been talking for a number of years. We need to unite and strengthen our resolve for betterment, and not only of ourselves, but for the future. It's very, very important. And in this day of the 100th anniversary, we need to come together. And I will take this opportunity and just leave a number, my number 820-4414, for those who want to support this initiative and those who want to bring forward ideas, because what we can do is we can meet. We have places like Profile's Place or other place. We call each other. Come, let us meet. Come, let us do something tangible. This is the 100th anniversary of Marcus Garvey, and don't we have to come back next year and regret that nothing was done.
Thank you very much, Devon, as usual. Really appreciate your coming in, and we'll continue to call on you as a co-host for the rest of the discussion programs as we go through looking at 100 years of the UNIA and 100 years of Garveyism. Thank you, Devon.
Thank you.
All right, so thanks to Devon Evans and to Queen Mother Mariam Samad. You know that we understand that we're out of time, so I'm not sure if we can do the bottom line, even though you hear the song playing. We want to talk about the dehumanization of the African Jamaican, but we can push that back to next week. But in the meantime, just want to tell you that interesting developments we're here coming out of Miami. Cuban Americans met in Miami on Saturday to discuss how to normalize relations with Cuba and end the 5-decade-long United States embargo against a communist-run island. The first such gathering in a decade in a city better known for hostility toward Cuba. The one-day event was organized by 4 groups led by Cuban Americans for engagement. That group was founded 2 years ago to counteract the influence of traditional Cuban exile organizations that support the embargo. So we're watching that. They say it's historic, and that it unites different organizations that are willing to sit down and discuss ways to stimulate the normalization of relations between the U.S. and Cuba. We wanted to give away another book. We didn't. So we'll do that next week. We are so sorry. My producer should have reminded me. All right. So we have plenty more books to give away, and we'll do that. We'll do 3 next week. Right, Joe? 3. Saudi Arabia has banned 50 names from Saudi Arabia. So I'm going to call those names. If your name, don't go to Saudi Arabia. If your names are, hold on. If you're called Malak, Abdul Ati, Abdul Nasser, Abdul Musle, Benjamin, Naris, don't go to Saudi Arabia. They've banned those names in Saudi Arabia. Yara, Sitab, Lowland, Tilaj, Bara, Abdul Nabi, Abdul Rasul, Sumu, don't go to Saudi Arabia. Devon, I'm not sure if you can go. Have to look to see if your name is on the list, but keep listening. You can go to Saudi Arabia. All right. They've also banned Mamlaka. They've banned Malaika, which a lot of young girls I know are called Malaika. Mamlaka, Tabaka, Nadine, Sandy. If you're called Sandy, they've banned that name in Saudi Arabia. Rama, Malene, Elaine. Saudi Arabia's banned the name Elaine, so my sister can't go, my friend. Hey, E.T., how you doing? You can't go to Saudi Arabia, my darling. All right, Ina, Maliktina, Maya. If you're called Maya, stay right where you are. Linda, my darling, you can't go either. All right, Randa, Basmala, Jibril. Let me see if Joy is there. Okay, no. All right, Amir, you can't go. Alice, Larine. I don't know why Saudi Arabia has banned these names, but that's what we understand. Lauren, you're banned also. Your names. I don't know. You never know. You never know. But Saudi Arabia's Interior Ministry has banned 50 names that they argue contradict the culture or religion of a kingdom. And you see, we should do that too. A lot of names that we carry contradict the culture, the religion, the spirituality of our African selves. And so I am banning Andrea. My name is Kabu. No, seriously. Kabu Ma'at Keru is my name. And this one here, who used to call herself Joy, she's now Kai. No, we're laughing, but it's serious as we reclaim our African-centeredness. If Saudi Arabia can do that, because these names contradict the culture or religion of the kingdom, then we need to ban some names too. So let me start with myself, all right? But I'm going to give you time to get used to it anyway, all right? The big is coming up next. We're going to talk about the dehumanization of the African Jamaican in our bottom line next week. I'm so sorry that we weren't able to bring the bottom line. It's kind of long, so it's time now for the big inside of the Sunday Sunshine. We've got a lot to talk about next week. Thanks very much to all those who participated in the program this morning. Thanks to my producer, Kai, Joy Morgan. Thank you very much to Professor Vereen Shepherd. Oh, we did say we were going to read, tell you the word Rasta, R-A-S-T-A, is mentioned 32 times in the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Some people know it as the Book of the Dead. The Book of Coming Forth by Day, which was written long before everything else. Rasta is mentioned there 32 times. I'll read it for you next week. All right, so thanks to Professor Vereen Shepherd. Thanks very much to Olimata Tal and Isis. Thanks very much to Hanselberry, businessman, and I hope, that he's able to sort things out. He's lost so much in China. Once again, remember now, if you're a business person thinking of going to China to conduct businesses, ensure that you have as much information as possible. And Mr. Berry is saying, do not leave until you put your stuff in the container yourself and you see the container go up on the ship. All right, thanks very much to Kwame Pianke. Thank you, Kwame. You have assisted us so much in understanding a little bit more about coal energy, coal technology, and giving us an idea as to where the questions to ask regarding the coal plant, the suggested coal plant for Goat Island. So thanks to ISIS and Olamatatal. Remember now, we're heading to the Gambia, May 9 to the 17 for the 11th International Roots Festival. To Lana and Robert. Devon Evans, of course.